Hello, midnight wanderers, and welcome to Dreadvane. This is where ancient whispers rise beneath a crimson sky, carrying you softly into the world of dreams and shadows. Before tonight's haunting story begins, tell me, what corner of the world are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. And if the silence of the night calls to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, so you'll never miss the moon's next dark secret. This happened 10 years ago, when I was 18 years old. I still remember that day with a level of detail that I wish my mind had let go of by now. Some memories fade with time. Some become softer around the edges. Some turn into stories you can tell without feeling them in your body anymore. But this one never became like that for me. Even now, after all these years, I can still feel the water on my skin, the steam in the bathroom, the silence in my throat, and the horror of looking down at my own hands and seeing them full of my hair. It started as an ordinary shower. That is one of the reasons it scared me so badly. There was no warning. No strange feeling earlier in the day. No pain, no dramatic sign that something was wrong with my body. I had not woken up feeling sick. I had not looked in the mirror and noticed anything unusual. I had not been losing clumps of hair in the days before, at least not in any way that made me think something serious was happening. It was just a normal day, and I was doing something I had done thousands of times before. I got into the shower like usual. The water was warm, the bathroom was steamy, and I went through the same routine everyone does without thinking much about it. I stood under the water for a while, let my hair get wet, reached for the shampoo, and started washing my hair. There was nothing scary at first. Nothing felt different. My fingers moved through my hair the same way they always did. Then I looked at my hands. There was hair in them, a lot of hair. At first my brain tried to make it normal. Everyone loses some hair in the shower. That is what I told myself in the first second. Hair comes out when you wash it. It sticks to your fingers. It gathers near the drain. It happens. I did not want to panic right away because there had to be a normal reason for it. So I rinsed my hands and kept washing. Then more came out. With every washing motion, more hair pulled away from my head. Not a few strands. Not the normal amount. Full pieces of it. Thick clumps. Hair wrapped around my fingers and stuck to my palms. I remember staring at my hands, confused at first, then scared, then completely frozen inside. My fingers were moving through my hair, and my hair was coming out as if it had never been attached to me at all. I tried to be gentle, but it did not matter. Every time I touched my head, more came loose. I kept thinking, this cannot be happening. That was the only thought I had at first. It repeated in my head over and over. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. But it was happening. I could feel the difference on my scalp. I could feel the hair thinning under my fingers. I could see the clumps falling into the water and sliding down my body. I could see them collecting around the drain. The shower drain started to clog with my hair. The water that should have disappeared quickly began to pool around my feet. Strands floated and curled in the water like something dead. Hair stuck to the tile. Hair stuck to my skin. Hair caught between my fingers. It was everywhere. The more I tried to rinse it away, the more came off my head. I was too shocked to scream. That is something people do not always understand about fear. In movies, people scream right away. They cry. They call for help. They react loudly. But sometimes, when something is too sudden and too wrong, your body goes quiet. Your mind cannot catch up. You are trapped in the moment, watching something impossible happen, and there is no sound in you. I kept washing because I did not know what else to do. That sounds strange now, but at the time, I was in shock. Part of me thought maybe if I rinsed everything out, it would stop. Maybe there was something in the shampoo. Maybe my hair was tangled. Maybe I was just pulling out loose hair that had already shed. Maybe there would be an end to it. So I kept moving my hands through my hair, even though every movement made the situation worse. More and more came out. At some point, I realized I was pulling out handfuls of my own hair. Not strands, handfuls. I looked down and saw my hands full of it, dark and wet and heavy. It did not feel real. It felt like a nightmare where your teeth fall out or your skin starts peeling off. It felt like my body had suddenly decided to come apart in the most personal and horrifying way possible. Hair is not just hair when it is on your head. It is part of how you see yourself. It is part of how others see you. It is there every time you look in a mirror, every time you run your fingers through it, every time you get ready to go somewhere. And suddenly, mine was leaving me in the shower, all at once. The bathroom had a mirror across the room. Because of the steam and the angle, I could still see myself enough to understand what was happening. I slowly looked up. I will never forget that reflection. I was standing in the shower, wet and silent, staring across the room at my own bald head. It was not completely clear through the steam, but it was clear enough. Where my hair had been, there was now my scalp, bare skin, smooth patches, a head I did not recognize. I stared at myself like I was looking at a stranger. For a moment, I did not feel like I was inside my own body anymore. It felt like my mind had stepped away from me, as if it could not handle what my eyes were seeing. I felt like I was falling apart, not just physically, but mentally too. It is hard to explain how terrifying it is to have your body change that fast without your permission. If something happens slowly, you have time to adjust. You have time to worry, to ask questions, to see a doctor, to prepare yourself in some small way. But this was not slow. It was not a warning. It was not a gradual thinning that I noticed over months. It was like my body had been fine one moment, and then the next moment, it had betrayed me completely. I remember thinking I might die. That sounds dramatic, but in that moment, I honestly believed it. I did not understand what was happening. I did not know a person could lose hair like that and still be okay. I thought maybe something inside me was shutting down. Maybe I had some terrible illness. Maybe my body was attacking itself. Maybe this was just the first sign, and soon something worse would happen. I was 18 years old, standing in the shower, watching my hair clog the drain, and I thought I was dying. There was no pain, and somehow that made it scarier. If there had been pain, maybe my mind could have connected it to an injury. If I had been bleeding, maybe I could have understood that something had hurt me. But there was only the sensation of hair slipping away from my scalp. No warning, no explanation, just loss. My body was changing in front of me, and I could do nothing to stop it. I do not remember exactly how long I stood there. Time became strange. The shower was still running. Water was still hitting my shoulders. Steam still filled the bathroom. The drain was still blocked with hair. I was still looking at myself. I felt cold even though the water was warm. My hands were shaking, but I still did not know what to do. Eventually, I must have turned off the water. I must have stepped out. I must have wrapped myself in a towel. But those parts of the memory are blurry. The sharp part is the shower, the clumps of hair, the mirror, my bald head, the feeling that I was no longer whole. Later, I found out what it was. It was a sudden autoimmune disease, alopecia overnight. My body had attacked my hair follicles. That was the reason. There was a medical explanation, and eventually I learned the words for it. But at the time, none of that knowledge was there to comfort me. In that first moment, all I knew was that I had gone into the shower with hair and came out without it. The weeks after that were also hard. Losing the hair on my head had been shocking enough. But then I started losing the rest of my body hair too. It did not stop with my scalp. It kept going. My eyebrows, lashes, arms, legs, everything. Bit by bit, my body became unfamiliar to me. Every new loss felt like another reminder that something inside me was happening without my control. People sometimes think hair loss is only about appearance, but it is much deeper than that. It changes the way you feel in public. It changes how you move through the world. It changes how people look at you, or how you think they are looking at you. It changes simple things, like getting ready, looking in mirrors, taking pictures, or standing under bright lights. At 18, when you are still figuring out who you are, losing all your hair so suddenly feels like having part of your identity ripped away. The emotional shock was just as intense as the physical change. I had to grieve something that other people might not understand. Some might say, it's just hair. But it did not feel like just hair. It felt like my body had broken a promise. It felt like I could not trust myself anymore. If my own immune system could do that without warning, what else could happen? What else could change overnight? For a while, I felt exposed all the time. Without hair, I felt like people could see too much of me. I felt like I could not hide. I had to deal with stares, questions, sympathy, confusion, and sometimes people trying to be kind in ways that still hurt. I had to learn how to look at myself again. I had to learn how to exist in a body that looked different from the one I had known my whole life. It was not easy. But time is strange. The thing that once feels impossible can become something you live with. Slowly, I adjusted. I learned more about alopecia. I learned that I was not dying. I learned that I was not alone. I learned that my hair might never come back. And eventually, I learned how to be okay with that. And I really am okay with it now. That is something I want to make clear. My hair never returned, but I am not living every day in sadness over it. I have made peace with my body in a way I never thought I could when it first happened. I found strength I did not know I had. I learned that beauty and identity are not as fragile as I feared. I learned that I could still be myself without hair. I could still laugh, love, live, and feel whole. But being okay now does not erase the horror of that first moment. I can accept what happened and still remember how terrifying it was. I can be comfortable with myself now and still feel a chill when I think about that shower. I can talk about alopecia openly and still never forget what it felt like to pull out handful after handful of my own hair. With no warning, no reason I understood, and no way to stop it. That memory is burned into me. The drain clogged with my hair, the water around my feet, the silence, the mirror across the room, my bald head staring back at me. It felt like the end of the world at the time. Not because hair is everything, but because in that moment, I did not know what was happening. I did not know if I was sick in a way that could kill me. I did not know if this was the beginning of something much worse. I only knew that my body was changing faster than my mind could survive. Even now, 10 years later, when I think about it too closely, I can feel that old fear again. It is not as sharp as it was, but it is still there. A small echo. A reminder of that 18-year-old standing in the shower, holding wet clumps of hair and staring at a reflection that did not feel like her own. But I also feel something else now. I feel proud of her. She thought she was falling apart, but she kept going. She thought she might die that day, but she lived. She lost all her hair, then all her body hair, and still built a life beyond that moment. She learned to look in the mirror again. She learned to be seen. She learned that one terrifying change did not have to destroy her. The shower moment will always be one of the scariest memories of my life. I do not think anything can take that away. There are some experiences that mark you permanently, even after you heal from them. This was one of mine. But if anyone else is going through alopecia, or waking up to sudden hair loss, or feeling like their body has betrayed them, I want them to know something. The fear is real. The grief is real. The shock is real. You are not weak for being scared. You are not vain for mourning your hair. You are allowed to feel devastated. But it is not the end of you. It may feel like you are falling apart, but you are still here. You are still a person. You are still worthy of love, confidence, and peace. It may take time. It may take years. There may be moments when you feel okay, and moments when the grief returns out of nowhere. But there is life after that first horrible moment. I know, because I lived it. I lost my hair overnight. I lost the rest soon after. And even though I will never forget that day in the shower, I am still here, and I am okay. This happened 8 years ago, but sometimes it still does not feel that far away. Time is strange when something traumatic happens to you. Years can pass, your life can change. You can grow older, and people around you can act like the past is finished, but certain memories stay close. They do not feel like old memories. They feel like something that happened just a little while ago. Something your body still remembers, even when your mind is trying to move on. I was 13 at the time. My brother was 17. There was a 4-year age gap between us, but at that age, 4 years felt huge. He was bigger, stronger, older, and angrier than me. He already had the size of someone who could hurt me badly if he wanted to, and unfortunately, he did want to. He had been abusive toward me for a long time. It was not some one-time fight between siblings. It was not normal roughhousing. It was not the kind of argument where brothers shove each other and then get over it. It was real abuse, and I was the person he took it out on. A lot of his anger seemed to be tied to our dad leaving. Our dad ran out right after I was born, and my brother never handled that in a normal or healthy way. I was a baby when it happened, so obviously I had no control over it. I did not ask to be born. I did not make our dad leave. I did not take anything from my brother on purpose, but in his mind, or at least in the way he treated me, it felt like he blamed me for it. It was like I became the living reminder of the moment our family broke. He could not punish our dad for leaving, so he punished me instead. Growing up with that kind of anger in the house changes you. You learn how to listen for footsteps. You learn how to read a person's mood before they even speak. You learn which rooms feel safer and which ones make you feel trapped. You learn not to talk back, not because you agree with what is happening, but because talking back can make it worse. You learn to shrink yourself, to stay quiet, and to hope the storm passes over you quickly. That was how it often felt with my brother, like a storm. When he was angry, there was usually no real way to stop it. Sometimes he would yell. Sometimes he would hit me. Sometimes it felt like he was just looking for a reason, any reason, to come after me. I could be doing nothing wrong, and it would still happen. If he was in a bad mood, I was the target. If something reminded him of our dad, I was the target. If he was drunk, or upset, or bored, or angry at the world, I was the target. At 13, I did not fully understand how wrong that was. I knew it hurt. I knew I hated it. I knew I was scared of him. But when abuse happens in your own home, it can become part of the way life works. You start to think of it as something you just have to survive. You tell yourself it will stop when he calms down. You tell yourself it is not as bad as it could be. You tell yourself maybe if you stay out of the way, he will leave you alone. But he did not leave me alone. The night that changed everything started like many other bad nights, except it got much worse. My parents were out, and I was home. I do not remember every detail from before he came in. I do not remember what I was doing, what I was wearing, or what was on TV. I only remember that I was 13, alone with him in the house when he came home drunk. He was 17 at the time, and even though he was still young, he was already dangerous to me. Alcohol made him worse. It took whatever anger he already carried and turned it into something less controlled. When he came home drunk, the air in the house seemed to change. I could feel it before anything happened. I knew from the way he moved, the way he sounded, maybe even the way the door opened, that it was going to be a bad night. He started beating on me like he usually did. That is a horrible sentence to say, but that was the truth, like he usually did. It had happened enough times that there was a usual pattern to it. Normally, he would hit me for a little while, hurt me, scare me, and then eventually stop. That does not make it less serious, but at the time, my mind had learned to measure danger in those terms. If he started, I just had to get through it until he let up. I had to cover myself, protect my head as much as I could, and wait for him to get tired or bored or angry at something else. But that night was different. He did not stop. At first, I probably thought he would. I probably expected the same pattern. A few hits, some yelling, pain, fear, then maybe he would walk away. But he kept going. He kept hitting me, and the longer it went on, the more I realized something was wrong in a deeper way. He was not calming down. He was not easing up. He was not stopping himself. He was just continuing, like there was no limit in him anymore. I do not remember much after that. That is probably my brain protecting me. There are pieces missing. Trauma can do that. It can take a memory and break it into fragments. You might remember the beginning clearly, then lose the middle, then wake up somewhere later with people telling you what happened. That is what happened to me. I remember him coming home drunk. I remember the beating starting. I remember that this time he would not stop. Then there is a blank space where the worst parts should be. The next things I know are mostly what I was told afterward. My parents came home and found me unconscious. They found my face badly bloodied. I cannot imagine what that must have looked like when they walked in. I cannot imagine opening the door and seeing your 13-year-old child beaten so badly that he is unconscious. I cannot imagine the panic of that moment, the shouting, the rushing around, the fear of not knowing how badly I was hurt or if I would wake up properly. But I was not awake for that part. I only know what they told me later. When I came back to myself, everything had changed. The pain was there. The confusion was there. The fear was there. But there was also this strange feeling that the world had moved on without me for a little while. I had lost time. I had been hurt so badly that I was not even conscious to experience the immediate aftermath. I ended up having a severe concussion. That concussion did not just go away cleanly. It left something behind. It caused a stutter that I still deal with to this day. Before that night, speaking was just speaking. Words came out the way they were supposed to. After that, my speech became something I had to live with differently. A stutter is not just a sound. It affects how you feel before you talk. It affects how you think people are listening to you. It can make simple conversations feel harder than they should. It can make you hesitate before speaking because you already know your own mouth might fight you. That was one of the things my brother took from me. He also messed up my nose. It was not just bruised for a few days. It was damaged in a way that stayed with me. My face had been hit badly enough that the injury became part of my life after that night. The pain did not simply disappear when the bruises faded. It affected me for a long time. One of the worst parts was that I had to give up playing football for a year because of the constant pain. Football mattered to me. At that age, sports can feel like your whole world. It gives you structure, something to look forward to, a place to put your energy, and a part of yourself that is not connected to what is happening at home. Having to step away from it because of what my brother did hurt in a way that went beyond the physical pain. It was not fair. I did not choose to be hurt. I did not cause the abuse. I did not make our dad leave. I did not deserve to lose a year of something I enjoyed because my brother could not control his violence. But that is how abuse works. The person who hurts you walks away from the moment, and you are the one who has to live with the damage. You are the one who has to deal with the pain, the fear, the doctor visits, the changes in your body, the changes in how you speak, and the loss of things you cared about. After that night, my relationship with my brother was finished in a way I do not think he ever understood. Maybe from the outside, people might see siblings not talking and think it is just a family issue or some grudge that went on too long. But it was not a simple argument. He beat me until I was unconscious. He left me with a severe concussion, a stutter, a damaged nose, and enough pain that I had to stop playing football for a year. That is not something you just get over. Needless to say, I have not had a real conversation with him since then. Actually, I have not talked to him at all since it happened. Some people might think that sounds harsh because he was young too, only 17, and maybe he had his own pain from our dad leaving. But pain does not excuse what he did. Being hurt does not give you the right to destroy someone else. He took whatever anger he had and put it on me over and over, until one night he went too far. There are moments when I think about how close it could have been to something even worse. A severe concussion is already serious. Being unconscious after a beating is already terrifying, but the difference between surviving and not surviving can be frighteningly small. One more hit. One different angle. One fall the wrong way. One delay in getting help. I do not like thinking about it too much, but sometimes I do. I think about how my parents came home and found me like that, and I wonder what would have happened if they had come home later. That thought stays with me. The physical injuries were bad, but the emotional damage was deep too. After something like that, home does not feel like home in the same way. A sibling does not feel like a sibling. Your body remembers danger. You can hear a certain kind of footstep and feel your heart race. You can smell alcohol and suddenly feel 13 again. You can be in a normal room years later, completely safe, and still have your body prepare for violence because it learned that safety can disappear quickly. The stutter is a daily reminder. I wish it were not. I wish the past could stay in the past and leave my voice alone. But every time I struggle with words, some part of me knows where it came from. I know there was a before and an after. Before that night, I did not carry that with me. After that night, I did. That is one of the cruelest things about being hurt by family. The injuries do not always announce themselves as memories. Sometimes they become part of your body, part of how you speak, part of what you avoid, part of how you act around people who are angry, part of how you judge danger. You can move forward, but you still carry proof. I have tried not to let that night define my whole life, but I cannot pretend it did not shake me. It made me more aware of how quickly someone close to you can become dangerous. It made me understand that family does not automatically mean safety. It made me realize that cutting someone off can be necessary, even if other people do not understand. Sometimes distance is not about being cruel. Sometimes distance is survival. My brother and I shared a childhood, but that does not mean I owe him access to my life. He made choices. Maybe he was angry. Maybe he was broken in his own way. Maybe he blamed me for things I never controlled. But I was 13. I was a kid. I should not have been his punching bag. I should not have had to learn how to survive him. When I look back now, I feel sad for the younger version of me. I feel sad that I was used to being hit enough to say he was beating on me as usual. I feel sad that I expected him to let up after a little while, because that was the normal pattern. No child should have a normal pattern for being attacked by an older sibling. No child should have to measure violence by how long it usually lasts. No child should be relieved when the beating is only as bad as usual. That is not normal. But when you are inside it, it can feel normal, because it is all you know. I also feel angry sometimes, not just at him, but at the whole situation. Angry that our dad left and left behind damage he did not have to face. Angry that my brother turned that damage on me. Angry that I lost parts of myself because of someone else's rage. Angry that one night could affect my speech, my body, and my trust for years afterward. Anger is part of healing too, I think. It is the part of you that finally understands you did not deserve what happened. For a long time, I think I focused more on getting through it than feeling anything about it. That is what people do when they are young and hurt. They survive first. They process later, sometimes much later. The edit I would add now is that I originally got the number of years wrong when thinking about it, because it honestly does not feel like it happened that long ago. That is how trauma works. 8 years can pass, but the memory does not always feel 8 years away. It can feel close enough to touch. I can be older now and still remember the fear of being 13. I can know I survived and still feel the weight of what happened. I can live my life and still carry the sound of that night somewhere in the back of my mind, even if I do not remember every detail. The blank parts are almost as scary as the parts I remember. Not remembering everything means I have to live with what other people told me. My unconscious body, my bloody face, the concussion, the injuries, the aftermath. There is a helplessness in knowing that things happen to you while you were not awake to witness them. Your body was there. Your life was at risk. But your memory cuts out, leaving you with pain and secondhand pieces. I do not know if my brother ever truly understood what he did to me. I do not know if he feels guilt. I do not know if he thinks about that night. I do not know if he has told himself some version of the story where it was not as bad as it was. Abusers often do that. They minimize. They blame. They pretend. They say they were drunk, angry, young, hurt, or out of control. Maybe all of that can be true, but the damage still happened, and I am the one who had to live with it. The truth is simple. He hurt me badly enough that my life changed. He hurt me badly enough that I could not keep playing football for a year. He hurt me badly enough that my speech changed. He hurt me badly enough that I decided never to have a real conversation with him again. That decision was not made out of drama. It was made out of self-protection. I do not wish that night on anyone. Not the pain, not the confusion, not waking up to the aftermath, not having to learn what happened to you from other people, not the lasting injuries, not the strange feeling of knowing someone who should have been your brother became someone you had to survive. It was one of the worst things that ever happened to me, and even though years have passed, I still feel the echo of it. But I am still here. I lived through that night. I carry what happened. But I also know the truth now in a way I maybe did not know at 13. None of it was my fault. I did not make our dad leave. I did not deserve my brother's anger. I did not deserve the abuse before that night. And I did not deserve the beating that nearly destroyed me. I was a kid, and I should have been safe. I was not safe then. But I am not that helpless 13-year-old anymore, and staying away from the person who hurt me is one of the ways I remind myself that I survived. I was about 9 years old when this happened, and even though it was a long time ago, I still remember it in a way that feels too clear. Some childhood memories fade until they are more like feelings than pictures, but this one never faded like that. I can still picture the room, the window, the snow falling outside, and the face that appeared where no face should have been. It was winter, and it had been snowing that night. I was in my bedroom, lying in bed and watching the snow fall outside my window. At that age, snow still felt magical to me. I liked watching it come down in the dark because everything looked quiet and soft, like the whole world had been covered by a blanket. The backyard looked different in the snow. The grass disappeared. The fence lines looked smoother. Branches held white layers on them, and the air outside seemed still. My bedroom window faced the backyard. During the day, I could look out and see the yard clearly, but at night, especially during snow, it became something else. The glass reflected parts of my room, and beyond that reflection was the pale glow of snow in the darkness. There were no bright lights out there, just enough dim light from the sky and the snow itself to make shapes visible. The window was close enough to my bed that I could lie there and stare outside without getting up. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I was not. I was 9, and like a lot of kids, I sometimes stayed awake longer than I should have. The house was quiet. My mom was in her room. Everything felt normal. Safe. The kind of safe you feel as a child when you believe your home is separate from the rest of the world. Bad things might happen outside, but your bedroom is yours. Your bed is yours. Your window is only there to look through, not something danger can come close to. I remember feeling calm at first. I was tucked under the covers, warm inside while the snow fell outside. There was something peaceful about watching it. The flakes drifted down slowly, passing the window and disappearing into the yard below. I was not scared. I was not thinking about anything bad. I was just a kid lying in bed, watching winter happen. Then, suddenly, a man's face popped up right outside my window. It happened so fast that my whole body froze. 1 second, I was looking at falling snow. The next second, there was a face just inches from the glass, staring directly at me. He was so close. That is the part I still remember most. His face was not far out in the yard. He was not standing near the fence or passing by in the background. He was right there, pressed close enough to the window that I could see details even in the dark. His face filled the view. His eyes were looking straight at me, and for a few seconds, I could not move at all. He had a beard, and it was coated with ice. Little frozen bits clung to it, like he had been outside in the cold for a while. I remember his breath fogging against the glass, warm and steamy in the freezing air. It came out in cloudy bursts, spreading and fading on the window. The image was so wrong that my brain did not accept it right away. A man was outside my bedroom window in the snow, breathing against the glass, watching me in my bed. At 9 years old, I did not have the words for what I felt. I only knew that my body went completely still. I could not scream. I could not sit up. I could not pull the blanket over my head. I just stared back at him, trapped in that horrible moment. My mind was trying to understand how he was there. Why was he there? How long had he been outside? Had he been watching me before I saw him? Had he been standing there the whole time, waiting for me to notice? The window faced the backyard, which made it even worse. This was not someone walking on the sidewalk who happened to look in. This was not a neighbor passing by. To get to that window, he had to be in our yard. He had to come around to the back of the house. He had to walk through the snow to that exact spot. He had to choose my window. That thought did not fully form in my head at the time, but I felt it. I knew he was not supposed to be there. He did not knock. He did not wave. He did not look surprised to see me. He just stared. The way he looked at me made my skin feel cold, even though I was under the blankets. His face was close enough that I could see the ice in his beard and the fog from his breath, but not enough of him to understand who he was. He was just a man in the dark, outside my window, looking in at a child. It probably only lasted a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Fear can stretch time in a strange way. Everything slowed down. The falling snow seemed slower. His breath against the glass seemed slower. My own heartbeat felt loud in my ears. I remember being afraid that if I moved, he would move too. Like I had to stay still because that was the only thing keeping him on the other side of the window. Then something inside me finally broke loose. I unfroze. I threw off the covers and ran out of my room as fast as I could. I did not look back. I did not want to see if he was still there. I did not want to see his face move or disappear or smile or tap on the glass. I just ran. My feet hit the floor, and I rushed down the hall toward my mom's room. I was terrified by the time I reached her. I told her there was a man at my window. I tried to explain that I had seen his face, that he was right there, that he had been staring at me. I was probably crying or shaking. I know I was scared enough that I expected her to understand immediately. In my mind, once I told an adult, everything would happen the way it was supposed to. She would get up. She would check. She would call someone. She would believe me. But she did not. She thought I was making it up. Maybe she thought I had been dreaming. Maybe she thought I had scared myself by staring out the window too long. Maybe she thought the snow or shadows had made me see something that was not there. I was 9, and kids do have nightmares. Kids do imagine things. I understand that now, at least in a general way. But in that moment, being told it was not real felt almost as terrifying as seeing the man. I knew what I had seen. I had not dreamed it. I had been awake. I had been lying there watching the snow. I had seen his beard. I had seen the ice. I had seen his breath on the glass. I had seen his eyes looking at me. But my mom did not believe me. She told me to go back to my room. I cannot fully explain how helpless that felt. When you are a child and you are scared, you depend on adults to take the fear seriously. You need them to protect you. You need them to say, "I believe you," even if they are not sure yet. But instead, I was sent back to the exact place where I had just seen him. I did not want to go back. Every part of me wanted to stay in her room. I wanted to sleep on the floor if I had to. I wanted to hide under her bed. I wanted to be anywhere except in my bedroom with that window. But I was a kid, and when your parent tells you to go back, you go back. So I went back to my room. I did not lie down the same way as before. I could not. I could not look out the window again. The thought of seeing that face again made my stomach twist. I did not know if he was still outside. I did not know if he had left. I did not know if he was waiting for me to come back, so I hid in a way that kept the window out of my sight. I positioned myself so I could not see the glass. I think I stayed under the covers, or at least turned away and buried myself so the window was not in my view. I wanted to disappear into the bed. I wanted the blankets to become walls. I wanted to be small enough that nobody outside could see me. I kept listening for sounds, expecting to hear tapping on the glass, footsteps in the snow, or the window sliding open. The room that had felt peaceful minutes earlier now felt dangerous. The snow outside no longer seemed magical. It seemed like it was hiding someone. Every shadow near the window felt alive. Every little noise in the house made me tense. I do not know how long I stayed awake, but I remember feeling scared for a long time. I did not trust the dark after that. I did not trust the window. I did not trust the fact that the glass was still there between me and whatever was outside. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep, but it was not peaceful sleep. It was the kind of sleep that comes only after fear exhausts you, the kind where your body shuts down before your mind feels safe. The next morning, everything looked normal again at first. Morning has a way of making nighttime fears seem less real to everyone else. The sun comes up, the house feels ordinary, and the adults move around like nothing happened. The backyard probably looked bright and white with fresh snow. My room probably looked like just a room. The window was just a window again. But I knew what had happened. When it was time to leave for school, we went outside. That was when the truth was sitting right there in the snow. There were footprints in the fresh snow. They went straight back to my window, not near my window, not randomly through the yard, straight to it. The snow had recorded what my mom had not believed. Someone had walked through our backyard and gone right up to my bedroom window. The footprints were proof. I had not imagined it. I had not dreamed it. I had not mistaken a shadow for a person. A real man had been there, outside my window, staring in at me while I was lying in bed. I remember seeing those footprints and feeling two things at once. First, I felt fear all over again, because the prints proved that the man had truly been there. It made the whole thing real in a way that could not be brushed away. Second, I felt a horrible kind of relief, because now there was evidence. Now my mom had to know I was telling the truth. But that relief did not erase what had happened the night before. I had been sent back to my room while a stranger had been outside my window. Even if he had already left by then, no one knew that. He could have still been in the yard. He could have been hiding nearby. He could have been watching the house from the dark. I had been a child, and I had been told to go back to bed as if my fear was nothing. That is the part that still bothers me almost as much as the face itself. The man was terrifying, but not being believed made it worse. If my mom had gone to the window, turned on lights, checked outside, or called for help, maybe the memory would feel different. It would still be scary, but at least I would remember being protected. Instead, I remember running for help and being sent back alone. I do not know who the man was. I never found out. I do not know why he was in our backyard. I do not know if he had been watching the house before that night. I do not know if he knew my room was a child's room. I do not know if he saw me watching the snow and decided to scare me, or if he had already been looking in before I noticed him. I do not know if he was drunk, confused, dangerous, or just cruel. None of those possibilities make it better. What I do know is that he was close enough to my window for me to see ice in his beard. I know his breath fogged the glass. I know he looked right at me. And I know his footprints were there the next morning. That kind of thing stays with you as a kid. It changes how you think about windows. Before that night, a window was just something you looked out of. After that, it became something someone else could look into. It became a weak place in the wall. It became a reminder that the outside world can come much closer than you expect. For a long time after that, I hated having my bed near a window. I hated looking out at night. Snow did not feel the same for a while either. Snow used to make the world feel quiet and safe. But after that, I knew snow could also show you where someone had been standing. It could reveal a path you wished did not exist. It could prove that the thing you saw in the dark was real. Even now, I still think about how silent he must have been. I did not hear him walk up. I did not hear the snow crunch. I did not hear anything before his face appeared. 1 second I was alone, and the next second he was there. That means he may have been standing close before I noticed him. He may have crouched below the window, then lifted his head. He may have been watching me for longer than those few seconds. That thought makes my skin crawl. A child's bedroom should be one of the safest places in the world. It should be where you sleep with stuffed animals, books, blankets, and the belief that adults will handle anything scary. But that night, my bedroom became the place where a stranger's face appeared inches from the glass. It became the place where I learned that being inside does not always mean you are unseen. The image never left me. His beard with ice on it, his breath in the cold air, his face close to the window, his eyes on me. I do not remember what he was wearing. I do not remember if he had a hat. I do not remember exactly how old he looked. But I remember the face. I remember the closeness. I remember the way my body froze before I could run. Sometimes I wonder what he did after I ran out of the room. Did he stay there for a few more seconds? Did he laugh? Did he walk away calmly? Did he realize I had gone to get my mom? Did he hide? Did he watch another window? Did he leave the yard immediately? There is no way to know, and that uncertainty is part of why the memory feels unfinished. There was no ending where police caught him. There was no explanation, no apology, no answer, just a face in the window at night and footprints in the snow the next morning. That is all. But sometimes that is enough to stay with you forever. Because I was 9 years old, lying in bed, watching the snow fall, and a strange man came through our backyard, walked right up to my window, and stared at me from inches away. My mom did not believe me that night. But the snow did. I had already posted a shorter version of this somewhere else, but I wanted to go into more detail because the whole thing still feels unreal. This happened today, and even though it is over now, I still cannot fully calm down when I think about how badly it could have ended. Someone broke into my house while my girlfriend and I were away. But it was not just a normal break-in where someone smashed a window, grabbed a few things, and ran. That would have been scary enough, but at least it would have made sense in the usual way. This was stranger than that. The man who broke in acted like he had moved into the house. He made himself food. He took a shower. He put on my girlfriend's father's clothes. He even switched my laundry like he had some reason to be doing chores inside a house that was not his. The whole thing was so strange that when we first walked in, my brain did not even understand that we were in danger. My girlfriend and I came home like normal. We live in the middle of nowhere, so this is not the kind of thing we ever expected to happen to us. You hear stories about break-ins in busy neighborhoods or apartment complexes. But when you live away from everything, you get used to feeling like the world is farther away. That feeling makes you comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. We had only been gone for about 45 minutes. That is one of the parts that bothers me the most. 45 minutes is not long. It is not like we left for a full day. It is not like the house had been empty for hours and hours. We were gone for less than an hour, and somehow, during that short time, this man got inside and did all of this. Or worse, he may have already been inside before we left and stayed hidden while we were still there. That thought makes my stomach turn. When we got home, we walked in and saw him sitting by the front door. He was not running around. He was not hiding. He was not holding a bag of stolen things. He was just sitting there, like he belonged there, wearing my girlfriend's father's work shirt. Her father knows a lot of people, and because the man was wearing that shirt, our first thought was not that he was a burglar. We thought maybe he knew her dad. Maybe he was some worker, friend, or someone connected to the family. That is how strange the whole thing was. For a moment, we tried to make him fit into a normal explanation. Then, he started talking. He asked us if we believed in God. Then he told us the church sent him. That was the moment everything shifted. There is something terrifying about a stranger in your house speaking calmly like that. If he had jumped up and attacked us right away, at least the danger would have been obvious. But the calmness made it worse in a different way. He was sitting inside our home, wearing clothes that did not belong to him, talking about God and saying the church had sent him. Nothing about it made sense. My girlfriend and I did not wait to ask more questions. We ran out immediately. Once we were out, we called 911. As we got away, he did not chase us quickly. He did not sprint after us. He did not panic. He did not seem desperate. He just calmly walked out the door while we drove away. That calmness still bothers me. It felt like he was not afraid of being caught. It felt like he did not care. He had just been found inside someone else's house, and he still moved like he had all the time in the world. While we were on the phone with 911, we watched him. He hopped over 2 fences, but even that was calm. He was not moving like someone trying to escape as fast as possible. He was not acting like a person who had just been caught breaking into a house. He was steady and slow, almost casual. It was so strange to watch because every second felt urgent to us, but he seemed completely relaxed. Then we saw the police coming down the road. The officer got there incredibly fast. It had to be about 1.5 minutes, maybe around 90 seconds. Thank God for that, because at the time, we had no idea what the man had taken, or whether he had found anything dangerous inside the house. One of the scariest things was that we did not know if we had locked our gun cabinet. Because of that, we did not know if he was armed. That made every second feel worse. We were watching this man move away from the house, and we had no way of knowing whether he had gotten into the cabinet. We did not know if he had a weapon hidden under the shirt or somewhere on him. We did not know what he was capable of. All we knew was that a stranger had been inside our home, and we had just interrupted him. When he saw the cop coming, he ditched the shirt. The officer jumped out and detained him. Even then, the man was calm. He went to the ground calmly, like this was just another thing happening in his day. No yelling, no fighting, no panic. That part was almost as disturbing as if he had fought. His calmness made the whole thing feel unreal. After he was detained, we started learning more about what he had done inside the house. He destroyed the place, but he did not actually take anything. That is another part I cannot make sense of. He had made a pile of things he was going to take, but he never took them. He did not run with them when we caught him. He did not try to grab anything on the way out. He just left. It was like he was preparing to steal, but then his behavior did not match that either. Inside the house, things were a mess. He had made himself a plate of food. Just the idea of that makes me sick. A stranger was in our kitchen, using our food, touching our things, making himself comfortable. He had taken a shower in our house. He had put on my girlfriend's father's clothes. He had gone through the laundry and even switched it. That detail is so bizarre that I still do not know what to do with it. Who breaks into a house and switches the laundry? He also ruined my girlfriend's parents' bathroom door. It looked like maybe he had gotten stuck inside the bathroom or had some kind of fight with the door. I do not know what happened in there, but it was damaged badly enough that it was obvious. He tore tile in our room too, which makes even less sense. I have no idea what he was looking for or why he would tear up tile. It was not like he was doing a clean robbery. It was chaotic, but also weirdly calm. It felt like he had been living in a different reality inside our house. That is the only way I can describe it. He made food, showered, changed clothes, touched laundry, destroyed random parts of the house, prepared a pile of things to take, and then sat near the front door like he was waiting. Then, when we came in and found him, he spoke calmly about God and the church. My girlfriend is extremely shaken up. I am too, but she is really shaken because of how close the timing was. We were only gone for 45 minutes. That means he either got a lot done very quickly, or he had been in the house while we were still there before we left. That second possibility is what really scares her. It scares me too. If he was already inside while we were there, where was he hiding? Was he listening to us? Did he know when we left? Was he waiting for us to go? The more we think about it, the worse it feels. Our leaving patterns are very predictable, and now I cannot stop thinking that he may have been watching the house. He may have known when we usually leave. He may have known how long we are usually gone. Maybe he chose that moment because he thought he had time. Since we live in the middle of nowhere, it feels even more likely that he did not just randomly pick our house. Out here, someone does not usually just wander up by accident. It feels like he had to know something about the place, or at least be watching. Drugs are a crazy thing. I do not know exactly what he was on, but his behavior was not normal. Breaking into a house is already bad, but the things he did inside made it feel even more disturbed. The shower, the food, the clothes, the laundry, the strange religious comments, the calm escape, the random destruction. None of it felt like a normal robbery. It felt like someone who was not fully in reality. Later, we found out he had previous charges for battery with a deadly weapon. That made everything even more terrifying. This was not just some harmless, confused man who wandered into the wrong house. He had a violent past. He had already been charged before with something serious. We did not know that when we walked in. We did not know what he might do. We did not know if he was armed. We did not know if he would attack us. And we were lucky. That is the only word for it. We got lucky in so many ways. The timing of when we got home was perfect in a strange way. My girlfriend accidentally honked the horn when we pulled up, and that probably notified him that we were home. At first, that might sound like a bad thing, but it may have saved us from walking in on him in a worse place. Normally, when we come home, we go straight to our room. If she had not accidentally honked, we might have walked inside like always and gone straight back without realizing he was there. If he had still been in the shower, we might not have noticed him right away. If he had been in the kitchen, we might have walked right into him. If he had been hiding somewhere, we might have passed right by him and had no idea. That thought is terrifying. Finding him by the front door was bad enough, but at least we saw him right away. At least we knew something was wrong before we went deeper into the house. At least we were close enough to the exit to run. If we had gone to our room first, or if we had walked into the bathroom area, or if we had surprised him while he was doing something else, I do not know what would have happened. He had already damaged the house. He had already gone through our things. He had already put on someone else's clothes. He had a violent history. We did not know if he had gotten to the gun cabinet. So yes, we were lucky. The officer arriving as fast as he did was another lucky part. I still cannot believe he got there in about a minute and a half. In a rural area, you do not always expect that kind of response time. But he came fast, saw the man, and detained him before things could get worse. I am grateful for that, because every minute would have felt like forever if we had to keep watching the man move away, not knowing where he might go next or whether he would come back. Afterward, when we went back inside, the house did not feel like ours anymore. That is something people do not always understand about break-ins. Even if nothing is stolen, something is taken from you. Your sense of safety is gone. You look at your kitchen and think about a stranger making food there. You look at the bathroom and think about him taking a shower there. You look at the laundry and realize he touched your clothes. You look at your bedroom and see torn tile. You look at the doors and windows and wonder how long he had been watching. Every normal part of the house feels contaminated. It is not just the mess. It is the idea that someone moved through your private space and treated it like it belonged to him. He ate there. He showered there. He changed clothes there. He damaged things there. He sat near the front door wearing my girlfriend's father's shirt and spoke to us like he had a reason to be there. That is not something you just shake off. We barely slept afterward. My girlfriend was scared, and I cannot blame her. I was scared too. Every sound felt suspicious. Every shadow felt wrong. It is hard to close your eyes after something like that, because your mind keeps replaying all the possible ways it could have gone worse. What if we had walked in sooner? What if we had walked in later? What if he had found a weapon? What if he had attacked us? What if my girlfriend had been alone? What if we had not run immediately? What if the police had taken longer? What if the horn had not gone off? Every version of the story could have ended badly, but somehow it did not. We are okay. We are shaken, but we are okay. That is what I keep coming back to. As scary as it was, as strange as it was, and as much as the house was destroyed, we walked out. He did not chase us fast. We got away. The police came quickly. He was detained. No one was hurt. Still, the fear stays. It is the kind of thing that changes how you look at your own routines. We thought our leaving patterns were normal, but now they feel like something someone could use against us. We thought living in the middle of nowhere made us safer, but now it feels like it also made us more isolated. We thought coming home was just coming home, but now the idea of opening the door feels different. I keep thinking about him sitting by the front door. That image is burned into my mind. A stranger inside our house, wearing my girlfriend's father's work shirt, calm as anything, asking if we believed in God and saying the church sent him. It was so bizarre that for a moment our brains tried to make it normal. That moment scares me too. The human mind wants to explain things so badly that it can take a dangerous situation and try to fit it into a safe one. Maybe he knows her dad. Maybe he is supposed to be here. Maybe there is a reason. But there was no reason. He had broken in. He had made himself at home. He had destroyed parts of the house. And he had no right to be there. I am thankful we trusted our instincts and ran. I am thankful we did not stay and ask questions. I am thankful we called 911 right away. I am thankful the officer arrived so quickly. I am thankful we are alive and safe. But I am still disturbed by how calm he was. Most people who are caught doing something wrong react in some way. They panic, lie, shout, run, or act nervous. He did not. He calmly walked out. He calmly hopped fences. He calmly dropped the shirt when he saw the cop. He calmly went to the ground when detained. That kind of calm is not comforting. It is frightening, because it makes you wonder what he was thinking. It makes you wonder what he would have done if he had not been interrupted. It makes you wonder if he had a plan, or if he was just moving through some drug-fueled version of reality where our home became his. We may never fully know. What I do know is that today, someone broke into our house. He made food, showered, changed into my girlfriend's father's clothes, switched my laundry, damaged doors and tile, and made a pile of things he might have planned to take. Then my girlfriend and I came home and found him sitting by the front door. He asked us if we believed in God. He said the church sent him. We ran. The police came fast, and thank God, we got lucky. Because if even one small thing had happened differently, this story could have ended in a much worse way. When I was a kid, I lived on the 9th floor of an apartment building. At that age, the building felt like a whole world by itself. There were stairwells, hallways, neighbors, doors, balconies, and of course, the elevator. The elevator was something we used all the time, so it became part of our daily life in a way kids never really think about. It was just there. We pressed the button, got in, rode up or down, and jumped out when we reached the right floor. But because we were kids, we also turned it into a game. Looking back now, it was a stupid game. Not just stupid in the harmless way kids do dumb things, but actually dangerous. At the time, none of us understood that. We thought it was funny. We thought it was a prank. We thought the worst thing that could happen was that someone would get annoyed or have to ride the elevator longer than they wanted. The game was simple. Whenever my friends and I were going up to my place, we would try to trap the last person in the elevator. The idea was to get out quickly, then close the elevator doors before the last person could step out. If we managed to do it, that person would be stuck inside while the elevator went all the way down and then came back up again. It was childish and annoying, but to us, it was hilarious. We did it because kids love making each other suffer in small ways. Nobody wanted to be the unlucky one. Everyone wanted to jump out fast enough and laugh at whoever got caught. We never thought about the elevator as a machine that could seriously hurt someone. To us, it was just a metal box with doors. We had ridden it hundreds of times. That familiarity made it feel safe. One day, I became the lucky one. My friends and I were going up to my apartment like usual. We were probably laughing and pushing each other, already thinking about who would get trapped when the doors opened. I knew they were going to try to close the doors on me before I could get out. I saw it coming, and I tried to stop them. When the elevator reached my floor and the doors opened, the others started getting out fast. I was still inside, and they began trying to shut the door before I could step through. Instead of just letting them win or pulling my foot back, I did what seemed smart to me at the time. I put my foot between the doors. I had a sneaker on, and I thought that would stop the doors from closing. That was how elevator doors were supposed to work, at least in my mind. If something blocked them, they would open again. We had all seen elevator doors stop when someone put a hand or foot in the way. So I pushed my sneaker into the gap, thinking the doors would bounce back and I would be able to step out. But that did not happen. My friend still managed to close the elevator doors. I do not know if the elevator was old, or if the sensor was not working properly, or if my foot was in a bad position, but the doors closed anyway. My foot was caught, and before I fully understood what was happening, the ground floor button had already been pressed. Then the elevator started moving down. That was the moment everything changed. At first I was confused more than scared. I was still thinking like a kid. My foot was stuck. The doors were closed, and the elevator was moving. It took my brain a second to understand that this was not part of the joke anymore. This was not me being trapped in the elevator and having to ride down. Something was wrong with my foot. Then I realized that the rubber sole of my sneaker had gotten trapped between the floor and the elevator door. It was not just my shoe stuck between two harmless doors. The gum-like rubber part of the sneaker was caught in the narrow space near the floor, right where the elevator and the shaft did not move together in the way a child expects. The elevator was going down, but my shoe was caught in a fixed point. That meant my leg was being pulled in a way it was never supposed to be pulled. In only a couple of seconds, I went from standing inside the elevator to being yanked downward. The force was sudden and terrifying. My body dropped, but my foot stayed caught. I was pulled down toward the floor, then lower, until I was hanging by my trapped boot under the roof area of the elevator. It is hard to explain clearly, but the elevator was moving down, and my leg was being dragged into the narrow gap between the elevator and the outside structure. My body was inside the lift, but my trapped foot and leg were being pulled somewhere they should never have gone. For those few seconds, I honestly thought I was going to die. I know people say that lightly sometimes, but I mean it. In that moment, I felt certain that I was about to be crushed or torn apart by the elevator. There was no time to think calmly. There was no time to shout for help in a useful way. Everything happened so fast that my mind could barely keep up with my body. I remember feeling the pull on my leg. I remember the panic. I remember realizing that I had no control at all. The elevator was stronger than me. The machine did not care that I was a kid. It did not stop because I was scared. It kept moving, and my body was caught in it. People talk about seeing their life flash before their eyes, and I know that sounds dramatic, but something close to that happened to me. In those few seconds, scenes from my short life seemed to rush through my mind. It was not organized. It was not like watching a movie. It was more like my brain understood, all at once, that this might be the end. I was a child, and suddenly I was facing something much bigger and stronger than anything I had ever dealt with before. My leg was pulled outside the lift through a narrow gap. It went out up to about the knee. Then it stopped. The reason it stopped was horrible. My knee was thicker than the rest of my leg, so it could not pass through the narrow space the way my foot and lower leg had. That meant my knee became jammed against the edge of the lift's roof area. The pressure started building immediately. I could feel it pressing harder and harder. That pressure is something I will never forget. It was not like normal pain from falling or getting hit. It was crushing pressure. The kind that tells your body something is very wrong. My knee was trapped against the metal, and the elevator was still trying to move. For a moment, I thought my leg was going to be crushed or ripped apart at the knee. I was helpless. All because of a stupid prank. All because I had put my foot between the doors. All because we thought trapping someone in the elevator was funny. The fear in that moment was beyond anything I had known. I was not thinking about getting in trouble anymore. I was not thinking about my friends laughing. I was not even thinking clearly about the elevator. I just wanted it to stop. I wanted my leg free. I wanted to be back in my apartment hallway with the door open and my friends around me, where the worst thing happening was a dumb joke. But I was not in the hallway. I was trapped inside a moving elevator with my leg caught outside it. Then, finally, the rubber sole of my sneaker broke. That was probably what saved me. The shoe gave way before my leg did. The trapped rubber ripped or snapped free, and suddenly the force holding my foot disappeared. My leg came loose, and my body fell hard back onto the elevator floor. I landed on my head and back, The impact hurt badly. I remember the shock of hitting the floor after being suspended and pulled like that. 1 second I was hanging and being crushed by the pressure on my knee, and the next I was down on the elevator floor, stunned, hurt, and terrified. But I was inside the elevator again. My leg was no longer trapped. I was alive. For a moment, I probably could not even fully understand that I had survived. My body was full of adrenaline. My head and back hurt. My knee hurt. My whole leg probably felt wrong from the pressure and pulling. I was scared in a way that made everything feel unreal. The elevator kept going, or maybe it stopped soon after. I do not remember that part as clearly as the moment of being caught. What stayed with me most was the feeling of realizing I was trapped. The way my leg was pulled through the gap, the growing pressure against my knee, and then the sudden fall when my sneaker broke. It all happened incredibly fast. That is one of the things that makes accidents so terrifying. Before they happen, you feel like there is always time. Time to pull your foot back. Time to laugh. Time for the doors to open again. Time for the elevator to stop. But once the accident starts, there is no time at all. Everything happens in seconds. And by the time your brain understands the danger, your body is already in it. As a kid, I had no idea how close I had come to something much worse. I understood that it was scary and painful, but I do not think I fully understood the danger until later. As an adult, thinking back on it makes me feel sick. Elevators are powerful machines. They are not toys. Getting any part of your body trapped in the wrong place can end in a terrible way. I was lucky my sneaker broke when it did. If the rubber had not torn free, I do not know what would have happened. If my knee had been pulled harder, I do not know what damage it could have caused. If the elevator had moved differently, or if the gap had been slightly different, or if my foot had been caught more firmly, the story could have ended very badly. That thought still bothers me. We were just kids, but that did not make the danger less real. We were playing with something we did not understand. We thought we were controlling the elevator by pushing buttons and blocking doors, but really, we were only lucky the machine usually behaved the way we expected. On that day, it did not. My friends probably did not understand what was happening at first either. From their side, they were likely laughing because they had successfully closed the door on me. Maybe they thought I was just going to ride down like usual, angry, but fine. They could not have known my shoe was trapped in that dangerous gap. They could not have known I was being pulled down and crushed inside the elevator. That is another terrifying part. Sometimes the people who cause an accident do not even know it is happening. 1 second, everyone is laughing. The next second, someone is fighting for their life. After that day, I never looked at elevators the same way again. Even now, I think about where my feet are when elevator doors close. I do not play with them. I do not try to stop them with my body. I do not stand too close to the gap. I know most elevators are safer now, and I know they are supposed to have sensors, but that childhood memory is stronger than logic. I can still remember the feeling of my sneaker catching. I can still remember the lift moving down. I can still remember the pull on my leg. I can still remember the pressure on my knee. I can still remember falling onto my head and back when the shoe finally broke free. It was one of those moments that teaches you something in the harshest way possible. Not because someone sat you down and explained danger, but because danger grabbed you by the foot and nearly pulled you into a machine. The stupid game stopped being funny that day. At least for me. Before that, trapping the last person in the elevator seemed like a harmless joke. The unlucky person would go down, come back up, and everyone would laugh. But after what happened, I understood that elevators are not playgrounds. Doors, gaps, buttons, moving floors, All of it can become dangerous very quickly when you treat it like a toy. I was just a kid living on the 9th floor, doing what kids do, trying not to be the one trapped in the elevator. I thought putting my sneaker between the doors would stop them from closing. Instead, my shoe got caught, the elevator moved, and within seconds I was hanging by my trapped foot while my leg was pulled through a narrow gap. I thought I was going to die. Then, my sneaker broke. I fell back onto the elevator floor, hurt but alive. And even now, years later, I still think about how small the difference was between a terrifying childhood memory and something much worse. When I lived in Texas, I was in 2nd grade, and something happened outside my elementary school that I still think about even many years later. At the time, I was just a little kid, young enough to trust adults more than I probably should have, but old enough to know when something felt wrong. This would have been in the very early 1990s, when people were a lot more relaxed about child safety than they are now. Schools were not locked down the same way. Parents came and went more casually. Kids waited outside after school, without everyone treating it like a huge security risk. It was a different time, and because of that, what happened almost slipped through like it was nothing. My mom was late to pick me up that day, which was not unusual. She was late often enough that I was used to waiting. Some kids had parents who were always there right on time, standing near the curb or pulling up in line before the bell even rang. My mom was not like that. Sometimes I had to sit outside for a while after most of the other kids had already gone home. As a child, that could feel embarrassing and lonely, but I had learned to accept it. That afternoon, I was outside my elementary school, waiting for her like I had done before. The school day was over, and the crowd of children had slowly disappeared. At first, there were many kids around, backpacks swinging, lunchboxes in hands, parents calling names, car doors opening and closing. Teachers were nearby, watching the pickup area and making sure everyone got to the right car. It was noisy and normal. But little by little, the number of kids got smaller. Cars pulled away. Parents arrived and left. The noise faded. The front of the school became quieter. The line of cars thinned out until only a few people were still waiting. I was one of the last kids there. Being one of the last kids waiting outside school is a strange feeling when you are young. At first, you are not worried because you think your parent will come any second. Then you start watching every car more closely. Each time one turns into the parking lot, you hope it is yours. When it is not, you feel that little drop of disappointment. You shift your backpack. You look around. You wonder if your mom forgot, even if you know she is probably just late. There was a teacher outside with us for a while. That made the waiting feel safe enough. As long as an adult from the school was nearby, I did not feel completely alone. But at some point, the teacher went back inside to do something with another kid. I do not remember exactly what happened. Maybe another student needed help. Maybe there was something in the office. Maybe the teacher thought it would only take a minute. Again, this was the early 90s, and people were more relaxed about things like this. A child waiting outside for a few minutes did not seem as alarming then as it would now. So for a short time, I was outside without the teacher right beside me. That was when the blue minivan pulled up. It was a middle-aged woman driving. I remember the vehicle being a blue minivan, the kind that did not stand out much in that time. A normal family-looking vehicle. Nothing about it screamed danger at first. It was the kind of car you would expect a parent or relative to drive. That was probably why the situation could have been so dangerous. If a strange person had pulled up in a creepy-looking car, maybe even a child would have been more afraid right away. But a minivan driven by a middle-aged woman looked safe in a way. It looked ordinary. She pulled up near me and rolled down her window. Then, She spoke to me. She said that my mom had sent her to get me and bring me home. I remember feeling confused, not terrified at first, just confused. I was young, and adults often told kids what to do. A lot of children are trained to listen when an adult speaks with confidence. She did not act nervous. She did not ask if I needed help. She told me a story that sounded like it could be true. My mom was late, so she had sent someone else to pick me up. But something about it felt wrong. The first thing that bothered me was that she did not know my name. That may sound like a small detail, but even as a second grader, I noticed it. If my mom had really sent someone to get me, that person should have known who they were picking up. They should have said my name. They should have said something like, "Are you so-and-so? Your mom sent me." Or they should have told me something that proved they knew my family. They should have known my mom's name, or my name, or something specific. But she did not. She just said that my mom had sent her to get me. It was too vague. I looked at her, and my mind started trying to solve the situation. Maybe my mom really had sent someone. But if she had, why had she not told me? Maybe this woman knew my mom but did not know me well. Maybe she was a friend from work or someone from the neighborhood. But if she did not know me by name, how did she know I was the kid she was supposed to pick up? How did she know she was talking to the right child? That was the part my child brain caught on to. She was acting like she had been sent for me, but she did not seem to know enough about me. I think that one small moment of doubt may have saved me. Instead of getting into the van, I told her or decided that I needed to go ask my teacher what I should do. I do not remember my exact words, but I remember the choice. I did not just accept her story. I did not walk to the van. I did not open the door. I did not let her convince me that I was being rude or disobedient. I went back inside the school to find the teacher. At the time, I probably did not fully understand how important that decision was. I was just a kid checking with an adult because something seemed strange. But looking back, that was exactly the right thing to do. It was the kind of safety rule adults try to teach children now. If someone says your parents sent them, check first. Do not go with them unless you know for sure. But back then, I do not know if anyone had clearly taught me that. I just knew the woman not knowing my name was weird. I went inside and found my teacher. I told the teacher what had happened, that a woman in a blue minivan said my mom had sent her to pick me up. Then the teacher came back outside with me to check. By the time we got outside, the blue minivan was gone. The woman had left. That is another detail that makes the whole thing feel so sinister. If she had really been sent by my mom, why would she leave? If she were a real friend or neighbor doing my mom a favor, she would have stayed. She would have waited. She would have explained the situation to the teacher. She would have said, yes, his mother asked me to pick him up, and then there would have been some way to confirm it. But she did not wait. She disappeared. A few minutes later, my mom arrived. That proved everything. My mom had not sent that woman. There was no plan for someone else to pick me up. No friend had been asked to get me. No middle-aged woman in a blue minivan was supposed to be there. She had lied. At the time, I do not think I understood the full danger in the way I understand it now. I knew it was strange. I knew it was scary once my mom showed up and we realized the woman had not been sent by her. But as a child, your mind does not always go all the way to the darkest possibilities. You may feel fear, but you do not fully understand what could have happened if you had made one different choice. As an adult, I understand. That woman was almost certainly trying to kidnap me. There is no innocent explanation that makes sense to me. She pulled up when I was one of the last kids waiting. The teacher had gone inside. My mom was late. I was young, alone, and probably looked like an easy target. She used the exact kind of lie that could work on a child. Your mom sent me. She did not know my name, which means she probably did not know me at all. She was likely hoping I would be too young or too obedient to question her. If I had gotten into that van, I do not know what would have happened. That is the part that still bothers me. Maybe she would have driven away and taken me somewhere far from the school. Maybe there was someone else in the van I did not see. Maybe she was working with someone. Maybe she planned to hurt me. Maybe she planned to hand me off to someone else. Growing up in Texas and knowing how people talk about crimes and borders and child abductions, my mind goes to terrible places. I sometimes think I could have been taken across the Mexican border, sold, murdered, or disappeared in some way no one would have been able to fix. I know that sounds extreme, but when a stranger tries to lure a child into a vehicle, there are no comforting possibilities. There is no version where that is harmless. The fact that she left the second I went to get a teacher tells me she knew exactly what she was doing. She did not want another adult involved. She did not want questions. She wanted me alone, trusting, and quiet. It scares me to think how close it was. If I had been a little younger, I might have believed her. If I had been more afraid of disobeying an adult, I might have gotten in. If I had not noticed she did not know my name, I might have walked toward the van. If the teacher had stayed away longer, maybe the woman would have pressured me more. If my mom had been even later, maybe the woman would have tried again, or said something else. Everything depended on a small child realizing that one detail did not make sense. After that, I looked at waiting outside school differently. I do not remember every conversation that followed, but I know the memory stayed. It became one of those events that sits in the back of your mind as proof that danger does not always look like danger. Sometimes it looks like a normal woman in a normal minivan. Sometimes it has a calm voice. Sometimes it uses your own mother as the bait. That is what makes it so disturbing. As children, we are taught that adults are safe. Parents, teachers, relatives, neighbors, adults in cars, adults who seem nice. But a child cannot always tell the difference between a safe adult and a dangerous one. Dangerous people know that. They use it. They know a child may not want to be rude. They know a child may worry about getting in trouble. They know that if they say, "Your mom sent me," the child might believe it, because children trust their parents. I think about how carefully she must have chosen the moment. Maybe she saw me waiting there earlier. Maybe she watched the pickup area and noticed that I was one of the last children. Maybe she saw the teacher go inside. Maybe she had been circling the school. Maybe she had done this before. I have no way to know, but the timing was too perfect to feel random. I also think about how different things were back then. Today, many schools have stricter pickup rules. Kids are not usually left outside without supervision. Parents often have to be on lists, show ID, or use certain pickup lines. Teachers and staff are trained to watch for suspicious vehicles. But in the early 90s, a lot of things were looser. People trusted more. Kids had more independence, but that also meant more opportunities for someone dangerous to take advantage of a gap. I do not blame the teacher for going inside, because that was normal at the time, and maybe they thought I would be fine for a minute. I do not blame my mom for being late, even though that created the situation. Life happens, and parents are not perfect. But I do think about how quickly a normal delay could have turned into something irreversible. A few minutes. That is all it takes sometimes. The woman never came back, at least not that I know of. We never found out who she was. I do not know if anyone got her license plate. I do not know if the school warned other parents. I do not know if the police were called. I was a kid, so I only remember my part of the story. I remember standing outside. I remember the blue minivan. I remember the woman rolling down the window. I remember her saying my mom sent her. I remember feeling that something was off because she did not know my name. I remember going inside. I remember coming back out and seeing she was gone. I remember my mom arriving a few minutes later. That is all I have. But that is enough. Sometimes I wonder if she tried the same thing with another child later. That thought makes me sick. If she was bold enough to pull up outside an elementary school and claim a child's mother had sent her, maybe I was not the first. Maybe I was not the last. Maybe she had a plan and simply failed that day because I asked a teacher. Maybe she drove away angry, looking for another opportunity somewhere else. I hope not. I hope she got scared and never tried again. I hope someone noticed her van later. I hope no child ever got into that vehicle. But I do not know, and that uncertainty is hard. The older I get, the more I understand how lucky I was. Not lucky that it happened, obviously, but lucky that I had that little voice in my head telling me something was wrong. Lucky that I listened to it. Lucky that I went inside instead of stepping closer. Lucky that the woman left instead of getting out and trying to grab me. Lucky that my mom arrived soon after. It is strange to think that my entire life could have changed because of a decision made by a second grader. A small child standing outside school with a backpack, waiting for a late parent, looking at a stranger in a blue minivan and thinking, why doesn't she know my name? That question may have saved me. I think every child should be taught that they are allowed to question adults. They should be told that if someone says their parents sent them, they can check first. They should know a real safe adult will not get angry at them for being careful. A real friend of the family will wait while a teacher confirms it. A real emergency contact will know their name. A real helper will not drive away the moment another adult gets involved. That woman drove away because the plan was not working anymore. That is what I believe. And that is why the memory still makes my skin crawl. I was in second grade, outside my elementary school in Texas, waiting for my mom. A woman I did not know pulled up in a blue minivan and tried to convince me to get in by saying my mom had sent her. She did not know my name. I went inside to get my teacher. When we came back, she was gone. My mom arrived a few minutes later. She had not sent anyone. And if I had not trusted that strange feeling in my stomach, I might have vanished that day. This happened sometime around 2014, and even after all these years, it's still one of the strangest experiences I've ever had. I don't know exactly what I saw that night, and to be honest, I'm not convinced it was anything supernatural. There are plenty of reasonable explanations that make more sense than monsters or legends. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe I experienced road hypnosis. Maybe my eyes and brain simply misunderstood what they were seeing in the darkness. Whatever the explanation was, it terrified me at the time. Even now, remembering it gives me chills. Back then, one of my closest friends lived far outside town in a very rural area. It was the kind of place where the roads became narrower the farther you drove. Streetlights disappeared, and the only things surrounding you were endless fields and small patches of woods. One night, we decided to go see a midnight movie together. By the time the movie ended, grabbed something to eat, and started driving back toward his house, it was already somewhere between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. The roads were almost completely empty. Every few minutes, another car would pass in the opposite direction, but for the most part, I had the highway to myself. Eventually, we left the main roads and started driving through the countryside. The farther we went, the darker everything became. Out there weren't any city lights to brighten the sky. The only light came from my headlights and the occasional farmhouse far off in the distance. After I dropped my friend off at his house, I started the drive back home by myself. I had driven those roads several times before, so I wasn't worried about getting lost. As I made my way back, I approached an old cornfield that sat beside a four-way intersection. I remembered noticing something there earlier while driving my friend home. Standing out in the middle of the harvested field was what looked like a deer. Nothing unusual about that. Seeing deer in rural areas wasn't uncommon at all. The corn had already been harvested, leaving behind only short dead stalks sticking out of the ground. The animal appeared to be standing quietly among them, lowering its head every now and then as though it were eating whatever remained. I barely gave it a second thought. I continued driving. Now, on the way back alone, I approached that same intersection again. As my headlights swept across the field, I immediately noticed the deer was still there. At first, everything looked exactly the same. It appeared to be standing in roughly the same spot. I slowed as I reached the stop sign because I needed to make a right turn. As I eased the car forward and began turning the steering wheel, I glanced back toward the field. That's when everything changed. The deer stood up. Even today, I struggle to describe what I actually saw. Whenever I try explaining it, it feels like my brain refuses to process the memory properly. It's almost like there aren't words that accurately describe what happened. One moment, I was looking at what I believed was a normal four-legged deer. The next moment, it unfolded upward into something completely different. Not by standing on its back legs the way some animals occasionally do. This was different. The entire shape changed. It became much taller, much thinner. Its proportions suddenly looked completely wrong. Instead of a normal animal, I was looking at what my mind can only describe as some kind of impossibly tall, deer-shaped figure standing on two legs. Everything about the movement felt unnatural. It wasn't just surprising. It felt impossible. My brain immediately rejected what my eyes were seeing. For a split second, I genuinely couldn't understand what I was looking at. Then, instinct took over. I slammed my foot onto the gas pedal. Instead of making a careful turn, I accelerated as hard as I could through the intersection. My only thought was getting as far away from that field as possible. The tires grabbed the road, and the car surged forward. Within seconds, I was racing down the dark country road much faster than I should have been driving. Probably around 60 miles an hour, or even faster. I kept both hands locked tightly on the steering wheel. I didn't dare look directly toward the field again. I was afraid that if I looked straight at it, whatever I'd seen would still be there. Instead, I kept my eyes on the road. But from the corner of my left eye, I could still see movement. Something was keeping pace with my car, running beside me. I didn't turn my head completely because I was too afraid. I only caught brief glimpses through the driver's side window. Each glimpse made my stomach tighten. Whatever it was still moving on two legs. Somehow it was matching the speed of my vehicle. The most disturbing part wasn't even how fast it was. It was the way it moved. Its legs looked wrong. It's difficult to explain. Instead of moving the way human legs naturally move while running, it almost looked as though the motion was reversed, as if the joints bent in directions they shouldn't. It was like watching a video played backwards while the creature somehow continued moving forward at full speed. Every glimpse I caught made less sense than the last. I kept pressing harder on the accelerator. The road ahead curved gently to the right. I knew I couldn't take the curve at the speed I was traveling. Reluctantly, I eased off the gas. The moment I slowed down, something happened. Without warning, the figure abruptly changed direction. It didn't gradually slow. It didn't stumble. It simply turned almost 90 degrees in a single movement. Then it sprinted directly into the cornfield. It disappeared between the rows with unbelievable speed. Within only a couple of seconds, it crossed the field and vanished beyond the rise in the land. By the time I completed the curve in the road, it was completely gone. There was nothing left. No movement. No shadow. Nothing. I didn't stop. I didn't even think about stopping. I drove all the way home without looking back. The entire drive, my heart felt like it was pounding in my ears. Every dark tree beside the road looked threatening. Every shadow made me grip the steering wheel tighter. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I practically jumped out of the car. I rushed inside the house as quickly as I could. The first thing I did was lock every door. Then I checked every window. Even after confirming everything was secure, I still didn't feel safe. Instead of going to my bedroom, I grabbed my dog and went downstairs into the basement. For whatever reason, that felt like the safest place in the house. I stayed there for the rest of the night. I don't remember sleeping much at all. Every little noise made me jump. By morning, sunlight finally filled the windows, and everything looked normal again. My father wasn't concerned about monsters. He was annoyed. Apparently, I had made a tremendous amount of noise when I came home. He wanted to know why I had been slamming doors and running around the house in the middle of the night. I didn't even know how to answer. How do you explain something that you aren't even sure you saw yourself? Later that day, curiosity got the better of me. I drove back to the same field in broad daylight. Everything looked completely ordinary. The intersection was exactly the same. The harvested cornfield stretched out across the landscape. There were no unusual tracks, no strange marks, nothing that suggested anything unusual had happened. It looked like every other field in the Midwest. For years afterward, I occasionally wondered what I had actually seen. Whenever I searched online, stories about creatures like goatmen or skinwalkers came up because they were among the few descriptions that sounded remotely similar. At the same time, I know those stories come from folklore, and I don't claim that's what I encountered. In fact, I think there's a much more likely explanation. I had been awake for a long time. It was well after midnight. I had spent hours driving on dark rural roads with very little traffic. Sleep deprivation can affect perception. Road hypnosis is a real phenomenon. Under the right conditions, your brain can misinterpret shapes, movement, and distance in surprising ways. That's probably the most reasonable answer. If someone asked me today what I believe happened, I'd probably tell them I experienced some combination of exhaustion, darkness, and my imagination filling in details that weren't really there. Honestly, that's the explanation I hope is true. Because if it wasn't, then I still have absolutely no idea what kept pace with my car that night. I've driven those roads many times since then. I've never seen anything even remotely similar again. None of my friends who lived out there ever mentioned seeing strange creatures or unexplained figures. The area wasn't known for stories like that while I was growing up. I didn't even know much about skinwalker legends until years later, after reading discussions online. So it wasn't like my mind had been influenced by local ghost stories before the experience happened. Whatever I saw, whether it was a trick of my exhausted brain or something I'll never understand, it remains one of the few memories that still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Even today, whenever I find myself driving alone down a dark country road with empty fields stretching into the distance, I can't help glancing toward them for just a second. Part of me already knows I won't see anything, but another part of me still remembers that impossible figure standing up in the middle of the cornfield. And that feeling has never completely gone away. I do not know if this story is late to the conversation, But my aunt told me about something that happened to her some time ago, and it has stayed in my mind ever since. It is one of those stories that sounds simple when you first hear it, but the more you think about the details, the worse it becomes. Nothing violent actually happened, and nobody was hurt, but that almost makes it more disturbing in a strange way. The whole story hangs on one small decision. If my aunt had made a different choice that night, none of us know what could have happened. My aunt is from Italy, and so am I. She lives in an isolated house in the hills of Tuscany. If you have ever seen that part of Italy in the summer, you know how beautiful it can be. The hills roll on for miles. The light is golden in the evening. There are fields, old stone houses, narrow roads, vineyards, olive trees, and views that look like something from a painting. During the day, especially in warm weather, it feels peaceful and almost unreal. It is the kind of place people dream about visiting. But that same beauty changes completely in winter. In winter, and especially on winter nights, the hills can feel empty and frightening. The roads become dark and narrow. The wind moves through the trees and over the fields. Houses are far apart, and the silence can feel too deep. There are no busy sidewalks, no nearby shops, no traffic outside the window, no neighbors close enough to hear you quickly if something goes wrong. When the sun goes down, the whole countryside seems to pull away from the world. What feels charming in daylight can feel very lonely at night. My aunt's house is in one of those isolated spots. It is not the kind of place where someone would just casually walk by. You do not end up there by accident unless you are already on those roads for a reason. There are long stretches without other homes, and at night, the area can feel like it belongs only to the dark. That is one of the reasons this story scares me so much. The man who came to her door was not standing outside an apartment building in a town. He was at an isolated house in the hills, late at night, in winter. On the night this happened, it was cold and dark. My aunt was home alone with her little child, my cousin, who was only 3 years old at the time. My uncle was not there because he had a night shift at work. That meant my aunt was the only adult in the house. It was just her and a small child, alone in a quiet house, surrounded by darkness and empty land. I can imagine the feeling of that night, even though I was not there. A winter night in a remote house has a certain heaviness to it. The walls feel thicker, but the silence outside feels bigger. Every small sound stands out. A branch moving against something, the house settling, wind around the roof, a distant animal. All of it can make you stop and listen. But when you live in the countryside, you get used to a lot of strange sounds. You learn not to panic at every noise, because the night is full of them. Still, a doorbell at 11 at night is not a normal countryside sound. It was around 11 p.m. when the doorbell rang. That alone would have startled most people. At that hour, in a remote place, you do not expect visitors. If someone you know is coming, they usually call first. If there is an emergency, you expect a phone call, not a stranger appearing at your door. My aunt was not expecting anyone. My uncle was at work. She was alone with her child. The house was quiet, and suddenly someone was outside ringing the bell. She did not open the door right away. Instead, she went out onto the balcony to see who was there. From there, she could look down toward the entrance without immediately letting the person inside. That was smart, even if she may not have been thinking of it as a safety move at first. She just wanted to see who had come to the house so late. When she looked down, she saw a young man standing there. She said he looked about 30 years old. He did not look obviously suspicious at first. That is another part that makes this creepy. He was not dressed like some horror movie villain. He was not holding a weapon. He was not acting wild. From what she could tell, He looked like a normal man. The only thing that stood out was how tall he was. She said he was about 2 meters tall, which is around 6.5 feet. That is very tall, and in the dark, standing outside a lonely house, I imagine it made him look even more imposing. He spoke to her from below and told her that he had been in an accident with his motorbike 1 or 2 kilometers away. He said he needed help, and he asked if he could come inside. At first, that might sound believable. A person crashes a motorbike on a dark country road, walks to the nearest house, and asks for help. It could happen. People do get into accidents in isolated areas. Sometimes they need a phone, warmth, or someone to call emergency services. If you are a kind person, your first instinct might be to help. You might think, what if he is really hurt? What if I leave him outside and something happens to him? That kind of guilt can make people open doors they should not open. My aunt is a very good woman. She is kind, caring, and always willing to help people. But she can also be gullible and naive. She tends to believe the best about others, which is a beautiful quality in normal life. But it can also be dangerous in the wrong situation. When someone comes to your door asking for help, especially in a place where people still value kindness and community, it is hard to assume they might have bad intentions. And at first, she was going to let him in. That is the part that makes me feel sick when I think about it. She was alone in that house with her 3-year-old child. My uncle was away at work. The man was a stranger. He was very tall. It was late at night. The house was in the middle of nowhere. There was no one nearby to help quickly. And still, because she is the kind of person who wants to help, she almost opened the door. The strange thing is that she did not stop to question certain details right away. For example, if he had crashed his motorbike 1 or 2 kilometers away, how did he end up at her house specifically? Had he passed other places? Why had he come through those dark roads to that isolated property? Where was the motorbike? Was he actually injured? Did he look hurt? Why did he need to come inside instead of simply asking her to call for help from where she was? These are the kinds of questions that seem obvious afterward, when you are safe and telling the story. But in the moment, when someone is standing outside and claiming to need help, your mind can move too quickly toward compassion. She almost made the wrong choice. But then something stopped her. When she told me the story, she said that something inside her told her not to let him in. It was not a clear thought at first. It was more like a feeling, a warning, a deep sense that opening the door would be a mistake. She could not fully explain why. The man had not done anything openly threatening. He had not tried to force his way in. He had not screamed or demanded anything. But some part of her knew something was wrong. That kind of instinct is hard to describe, but I believe in it. Sometimes your mind notices things before you can explain them. A tone of voice, a detail that does not fit, the way someone stands, the way they ask for help but push for access to your home instead of accepting help from outside. Your body reacts before your logic catches up. You may not have proof, but you have a warning inside you that says, do not do this. My aunt listened to that feeling. Instead of opening the door, she went back out onto the balcony and spoke to him from there. She told him that she would call the police and an ambulance for him. If he had really been in a motorbike accident, that should have been exactly what he needed. Police and medical help would be the right response. If he was injured, an ambulance could take care of him. If there had been an accident, the police could find the bike and make sure the road was safe. But the moment she said that, the man ran away. He did not thank her. He did not wait for help. He did not say where the accident had happened. He did not ask her to hurry. He ran. That reaction told her everything. A person who has actually crashed a motorbike in the cold at night does not usually run away when someone offers to call emergency services. A person who truly needs help does not disappear the second police are mentioned. The fact that he ran as soon as she said she would call the police and an ambulance makes the whole story feel much darker. It means he did not want official help. He wanted to get inside the house. And if he only wanted to get inside, then why? That is the question none of us can answer. The moment he ran away, my aunt became terrified. The fear probably hit her all at once. A few seconds earlier, she had been thinking about whether to help a man who claimed he had been in an accident. Now she realized she had been speaking to someone who may have been lying. Someone who had come to her isolated house late at night while she was alone with her child. She locked herself inside with the baby and called the police. She also called my uncle. I cannot imagine the fear she felt while waiting. The house must have felt huge and unsafe. Every window probably felt like a weak point. Every sound outside must have made her wonder if the man was still nearby. Had he really left? Was he hiding somewhere in the dark? Was he watching the house? Was there someone else with him? Had he expected her to be alone? Did he know my uncle was working that night? Those are the thoughts that would have gone through my head. The Tuscany hills may be beautiful, but in a situation like that, the isolation becomes terrifying. If you are in a town and someone strange comes to your door, you can at least hope a neighbor might hear something. There may be people nearby, lights, traffic, or someone walking by. But in an isolated farmhouse, the distance itself becomes part of the danger. If someone gets inside, help is not just a wall away. It is down the road, across the hills, too far to reach instantly. My aunt stayed locked inside with her child. I imagine her checking the locks again and again, keeping the little one close and watching the windows. The man had already come close enough to ring the doorbell. He knew someone was home. He knew there was at least a woman inside. Maybe he had seen lights. Maybe he had watched the house before. Maybe he knew the husband was not there. Maybe he chose that night for a reason. That is what makes this story so creepy. We do not know if it was random. We do not know if he was passing through and chose the house because it had lights on. We do not know if he had been watching the home and waiting for a night when my aunt was alone. We do not know if he knew about the child. We do not know if he had a vehicle nearby. We do not know if there was even a motorbike at all. The lie about the accident, if it was a lie, was clever because it was designed to make her feel guilty. It put pressure on her kindness. It made her think that if she did not open the door, she might be refusing help to an injured man. That is the kind of manipulation dangerous people use. They do not always start with force. Sometimes they start with a story. They make you feel rude for being cautious. They make you feel cruel for not opening the door. They use your goodness as a tool against you. Luckily, my aunt's instinct was stronger than her guilt. I am so grateful she listened to it, because the scariest part is that she almost opened the door. She almost let him into the house. If she had done that, he would have been inside with her and a 3-year-old child. A very tall adult man, around 6.5 feet, in a remote house where no one else was there. Once he was inside, closing the door would have meant nothing. She could not have easily forced him back out. She could not have known what he wanted. She could not have known if he had a weapon, if he was violent, or if someone else was waiting outside. There are so many possible endings to that night, and none of the bad ones are worth imagining for too long. Maybe he would have robbed her. Maybe he would have attacked her. Maybe he was trying to get access to the house to see what was inside. Maybe he was testing whether she was alone. Maybe he wanted to harm her. Maybe he wanted to take something. Maybe he was only mentally unstable or drunk and did not want police involved. Even that would still be dangerous. But the truth is, we will never know. And I am glad we will never know. There are some mysteries you do not want solved through experience. You do not want to find out what someone would have done after you opened the door. You do not want the answer to come in the form of violence or trauma. The best outcome is exactly what happened. She refused to let him in, offered to call help, saw him run, locked the door, and survived the night. Still, surviving does not erase the fear. After something like that, your home feels different. A doorbell at night never sounds the same again. Every unexpected knock becomes suspicious. Every stranger asking for help makes you think twice. You may still want to be kind, but now there is a line between kindness and letting someone cross your threshold. My aunt learned that line that night. It also changed the way I think about isolated homes. People often imagine country houses as peaceful and safe, far away from crime and noise. In some ways, they are. But being far from others also means being far from help. A beautiful house in the hills can become frightening very quickly when a stranger appears at the door at 11 at night and asks to come in. I think about my cousin too. At 3 years old, they probably had no idea what was happening. They were too young to understand that their mother had just avoided something potentially terrible. They may have been asleep, or playing, or standing nearby while she tried to stay calm. That innocence makes the story even scarier. My aunt was not only protecting herself, she was protecting her child, even before she fully understood the danger. And I think about my uncle getting that phone call at work. I imagine how helpless he must have felt, knowing his wife and child were alone in the house while a strange man had just run away after being told police would be called. He must have wanted to get home as fast as possible. He must have spent the whole ride thinking about what could have happened if she had opened the door. That thought is what stays with all of us. What if she had opened the door? What if she had ignored the feeling? What if she had been just a little more trusting? What if she had thought, "He is hurt, I cannot leave him outside," and walked downstairs to let him in? One small decision kept that man outside. That is the part that makes the story so frightening. There was no dramatic fight, no chase, no police catching him in the yard. Just a doorbell, a strange request, a feeling in her stomach, and a choice. She chose not to open the door. That choice may have saved her and her child from something terrible. Whenever I think about this story, I always come back to the same lesson. You can help someone without letting them inside your home. If a stranger comes to your door late at night and says they need help, call emergency services for them. Talk through a locked door or from a safe place. Keep distance. A real person in danger will accept help. A person with bad intentions will often push for access. That is exactly what happened here. The man claimed he needed help, but when my aunt offered the safest and most logical help possible, he ran away. That tells me he was not there for the reason he gave. Maybe he thought my aunt would be easy to fool. Maybe he thought her kindness would make her open the door. Maybe he thought the isolated house gave him the perfect chance. But he did not count on her instinct. He did not count on that quiet warning inside her telling her not to let him in. I am grateful she listened. Because the hills of Tuscany are beautiful in the summer. But on that winter night, alone in that house with her child, they must have felt like the edge of the world. A stranger came out of the darkness with a story that did not feel right, and for a moment, he was only one door away from being inside. She never found out what he would have done. And honestly, that is the best ending this story could have had. I used to work as a farmhand and horse trainer's assistant. It was the kind of job that could be peaceful 1 minute and exhausting the next. There was always something to do. Feeding, cleaning stalls, moving horses in and out, checking water buckets, sweeping, organizing tack, and helping with workouts. If you have ever worked around horses, you know there is no such thing as a quiet, lazy day on a farm. Even when the weather is bad, the horses still need care, and the work still has to get done. Most of the time, I liked it. I was used to being around barns, fields, arenas, and horses. I knew the sounds of the place. I knew the normal creaks, the way the wind moved through the buildings, the sounds horses made when they shifted in their stalls or dragged their hooves through bedding. I knew what it sounded like when someone drove up the gravel drive, when a horse kicked a wall, or when rain hit the roof of the indoor arena. Farms make a lot of noises, and if you work there long enough, you learn which ones matter and which ones do not. One day, I was the only person at the farm. It was drizzling outside, not a heavy storm, but enough that everything was wet and gray. The grass was slick, the air felt damp, and the outdoor areas were not ideal for working horses. Because of that, I decided to work the horses on the lunge line in the indoor arena. For anyone who does not know horses, a lunge line is basically a long line attached to the horse, and you stand in the center while the horse moves in a circle around you. It is a way to exercise them, warm them up, or work on training without riding them. The indoor arena was a good place for that kind of work when the weather was bad. It was covered, large enough to move around in, and usually felt safe and familiar. There was a human-sized door on one side, separate from the larger doors used for horses or equipment. The arena had its own sounds too. Hooves hitting the footing, the line moving through your hands, the horse breathing, the soft echo of movement inside the building. When you are alone in a place like that, those sounds become almost rhythmic. I had a list of horses to work that day, and I got through about 4 of them without any problems. Everything felt normal. The horses did what they were supposed to do, and I was focused on getting through the work. I was not nervous. I was not thinking about anything scary. It was just another gray, wet day at the farm. Then I brought down a horse who was known for being very calm. He was one of those horses you could usually trust not to overreact. Some horses are dramatic and will spook at a plastic bag, a strange shadow, or a jacket hanging on a fence. But this horse was not like that. He was steady. He had a good mind. He could walk past loud children jumping on a trampoline without caring. Kids could be yelling, bouncing, making sudden movements, and he would barely react. That kind of horse is worth gold, because you know he is not easily frightened. So when I started working him in the arena, I expected it to be easy. Just a light workout, nothing serious. He did not need anything intense that day. I had him moving around me on the lunge line, letting him stretch, warm up, and get some exercise. The drizzle continued outside, and the arena was quiet except for us. While I was working him, I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It looked like someone walking past the human-sized door. It was quick, just a shape passing by. Not enough for me to get a clear look. I turned my eyes toward the door, but there was nothing there. No person, no movement, no sound of footsteps, just the door and the gray light from outside. At first, I told myself it was nothing. When you are working alone, your mind can play tricks on you. Maybe it was a shadow from the rain. Maybe something moved outside. Maybe I had seen a reflection or imagined it because I was tired. Farms and arenas are full of odd shapes, especially on gloomy days when the light is strange. I did not want to make a big deal out of one quick movement in the corner of my vision, so I kept working the horse. A little while later, I saw it again. This time, the movement went in the other direction. That made me more uneasy. A random shadow might appear once, but seeing a person-shaped movement twice, going different ways, is harder to dismiss. I still tried to stay calm. I did not want to panic over something I had not clearly seen. Maybe someone had come to the farm and was walking around outside. Maybe it was a worker I did not know had arrived. Maybe the owner had stopped by. Maybe a neighbor had come over for some reason. But something about it felt off. If someone was supposed to be there, why were they only passing the door? Why not come in and say hello? Why move by the arena without making themselves known? At a farm, people usually announce themselves, especially if they see someone working a horse. They do not just lurk around the building. I kept going, but now I was watching the door. That changed the whole feeling of the arena. A few minutes earlier, I had been relaxed, focused on the horse and the workout. Now my attention was split. One part of me was still managing the horse, watching his pace and keeping the lunge line organized. The other part of me was waiting for that shape to pass the door again. Every time the horse circled near that side of the arena, I glanced toward the entrance. I told myself not to overreact. I was alone, yes, but I was not helpless. I was used to handling big animals. I had my phone. I knew the property. Still, a farm can feel very isolated when you are by yourself, especially when you start to think someone might be outside watching you. Then, it happened again. The horse was moving past the door when the shape appeared, and this time, the horse reacted. He jumped sideways away from the door and let out a loud snort. That was the moment I knew it was not just my imagination. This horse did not spook easily. Like I said, he could walk by loud children on a trampoline and not care at all. He was not the kind of horse that jumped at every shadow. If he reacted like that, then he had seen or sensed something too. Horses are prey animals, and they notice things people miss. Their instincts are sharp. If a calm horse suddenly jumps sideways and snorts at something near a door, you pay attention. My fear went from mild unease to full panic very quickly. Until then, I had still been trying to explain it away. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the light was strange. Maybe a tree branch moved outside. But the horse's reaction changed everything. He had seen something. He had been startled by something real enough to make him jump away from the door. And I was alone. I stopped him and brought him back under control. I did not want him running around panicked or getting tangled in the lunge line. I tried to act calm for him because horses can feel tension. If I started freaking out, he might get more upset too. So I kept my movements controlled, even though inside I was scared. I began walking him out so he could catch his breath and cool down before I put him back in his stall. At the same time, I was thinking fast. I did not know who was outside. I did not know if it was one person or more than one. I did not know if they were just wandering around or if they were watching me on purpose. I did not know if they would try to come inside. The indoor arena suddenly felt less like a safe building and more like a place I could be trapped. There were doors, but if someone was outside one of them, I did not know where they were or what they wanted. I grabbed a dressage whip. A dressage whip is not a real weapon, but at that moment, it was something. It gave me something to hold on to, something that made me feel slightly less defenseless. I also called my boyfriend. I did not want to be alone anymore. I told him what was happening, that I thought someone was outside the arena and that the horse had reacted to them. I needed him to come there. While I waited, I kept walking the horse and cooling him down. That part felt strange because I still had to do the responsible thing for the animal, even though I was scared. You cannot just throw a horse back in a stall after work without cooling him down properly, especially if he had been moving enough to be breathing hard. So I kept walking him, listening for sounds outside, watching the door, and trying not to imagine someone standing just out of view. Those minutes felt long. The drizzle outside made everything quieter in a way, but also made the world feel more closed in. Wet grass, gray light, the smell of damp earth, the muffled sounds of the farm. I kept expecting to see the shape pass by again. I kept expecting the horse to jump. I kept expecting to hear a hand on the door or footsteps close to the building, but nothing obvious happened while I waited. By the time my boyfriend showed up, I had the horse cooled down. Together, we got him safely back into his stall. Having another person there made me feel a little better, but I was still shaken. I wanted to know what had happened. I wanted proof that I had not been imagining things. I wanted to know if someone had really been walking around the outside of the arena. So we went to check. My boyfriend and I walked around the outside of the indoor arena, looking at the ground and the area near the doors. Because it had been drizzling, the grass was wet and soft. If someone had been walking there, they might have left signs. They had. There were footprints in the wet grass. They went all the way around the outside of the arena. Then the tracks led into the woods behind it. Seeing those footprints made my stomach drop. It confirmed everything. Someone had been outside the arena while I was inside working that horse. They had not just walked past once. They had gone around the building. They had been skulking around, staying outside, moving near the doors, and then disappearing into the woods. That was not normal. If it had been someone who had a reason to be there, they would have come inside. They would have called out. They would have gone to the barn or the office or wherever people were supposed to go. They would not have circled the arena and then slipped into the woods. Whoever it was clearly did not want to be seen. They were close enough for me to catch glimpses of them. They were close enough for the horse to spook. But they never showed themselves openly. That is what scared me the most. It was not just that someone was there. It was the way they were there. Quiet, hidden, moving around the outside of the building. Watching, maybe. Waiting, maybe. I had no way to know how long they had been there before I noticed them. They could have been watching me work the earlier horses too. They could have been standing outside, looking in, listening, circling the arena while I had no idea. The footprints going into the woods made the whole thing feel even worse. The woods behind the arena were a perfect place for someone to disappear. Once they went in there, they could hide. They could watch from the tree line. They could come back later. I did not know who it was or where they went. I did not know if they lived nearby, if they had wandered onto the property, or if they had come there with some specific purpose. After that day, I did not like being alone at the farm. Before that, working alone had not bothered me much. Farms can be quiet, but they are also familiar when you work there. After that, the quiet felt different. The indoor arena did not feel the same. Every time I passed that human-sized door, I remembered the shadow moving by it. Every time a horse looked toward the woods, I wondered if someone was there. Every time the weather was gray and wet, I thought about those footprints in the grass. The worst part came later. About 3 months after that, a woman in a nearby town was murdered in her own barn with a fire poker. I do not think the two events were connected. I want to be clear about that. There was no proof that the person outside our arena had anything to do with what happened to her. Whoever had been skulking around the farm never came back. At least not that I know of. There was no clear link between the two things. But knowing that something so terrible happened in a nearby barn not long after my experience made the memory feel even darker. It reminded me that bad things can happen in places that are supposed to feel familiar. Barns, farms, and rural properties can feel safe because they are quiet and open, but they can also be isolated. If someone dangerous shows up, help may not be close. If you are alone, you are very alone. That thought stayed with me. I kept thinking about the person outside the arena. What were they doing there? Why were they walking around the building? Were they watching me? Were they trying to see if anyone else was at the farm? Did they know I was alone? Were they looking for something to steal? Were they just a trespasser? Were they mentally unwell? Were they dangerous? Had they been there before? Did they come back when no one noticed? I never got answers. And sometimes the lack of answers is what makes something frightening. If someone had walked in and said, "Sorry, I'm lost," or "I'm looking for the owner," then maybe it would have been weird but explainable. If it had been a neighbor or a delivery person, the fear would have gone away. But this person stayed hidden. They circled the arena. They left footprints. Then, they disappeared into the woods. That is not the behavior of someone with a normal reason to be there. I also could not stop thinking about the horse's reaction. Horses notice danger differently than people do. They see movement, smell things, hear things, and react to energy around them. The fact that such a calm horse jumped sideways and snorted told me that whatever was outside was real and close. That horse had no reason to panic at nothing. He was not a spooky horse. He was steady, and he reacted before I had proof. In a strange way, I was grateful for him. If he had not reacted, I might have kept telling myself I was imagining things. I might have stayed in the arena longer, continued working, and never realized someone had been circling the building. His reaction confirmed what my eyes had only half seen. It made me take the situation seriously. After that, being at the farm alone put me on edge. I paid more attention to doors, windows, and the tree line. I kept my phone close. I watched the horses more closely, because if they stared at something or acted nervous, I wanted to know why. I did not like working in the indoor arena by myself when the weather was gloomy. I especially did not like being near the side of the building that faced the woods. I know farms come with random people sometimes. Workers, neighbors, owners, farriers, vets, delivery drivers. People who get lost. People who think they can wander onto land because it looks open. But this felt different. This person did not want to be seen. That is what I keep coming back to. They were not passing through openly. They were sneaking around. In the moment, it was terrifying, because I had no idea what I was dealing with. I was responsible for the horse in my hands, alone in a building with someone unknown outside. I could not just drop everything and run. I had to manage an animal that weighed far more than I did, keep him calm, and get him safely back to his stall, while also thinking about my own safety. That is a very specific kind of fear. Because you are not only protecting yourself, you are also trying not to make a large animal panic and get hurt. I do not know what would have happened if I had gone outside alone to check. I am glad I did not. I am glad I called my boyfriend. I am glad I waited until someone else was there before walking around the arena. It is easy to look back and think maybe I should have done more, but honestly, in that moment, staying inside, keeping the horse calm, and calling someone was probably the safest choice. Whoever it was never revealed themselves. They just left tracks behind. Footprints in wet grass are not as dramatic as footprints in snow, but they can be just as chilling when they prove someone was where they should not have been. Those prints told the whole story. A person had gone around the arena, close enough to pass the door more than once, close enough to scare the horse, then walked into the woods. They had been there, moving around me, while I was trying to work like it was a normal day. I still think about how long they might have been watching before I saw them. Maybe they were there before I brought that horse in. Maybe they saw me work the first 4 horses. Maybe they knew I was alone. Maybe they were waiting to see if I would leave the arena. Maybe they were testing whether anyone else was on the property. I do not know. That is the part that made me so uncomfortable afterward. The mind fills in the blanks, and none of the possibilities feel good. Even though I do not believe the later murder nearby was connected, it changed the way I framed the memory. It made me realize that my fear that day was not silly. There really are dangerous people in the world, and isolated places can give them room to move unnoticed. The person outside the arena may have been harmless in the end, but their behavior was not harmless. They scared both me and the horse, and then they vanished without explanation. That experience stayed with me for a long time. After that, I never liked being the only person at the farm. I could still do the work. I could still handle the horses. I could still go into the arena, but the comfort was gone. I was always aware of the doors, always aware of the woods, always aware that someone could be just outside, close enough to see me before I saw them. It was one of those moments where nothing technically happened, but everything changed. No one attacked me. No one came inside. No one spoke to me. But someone was there, and they were hiding. Sometimes that is enough to make a place feel unsafe forever. To this day, I do not know who was circling that arena in the rain. I do not know what they wanted. I only know that the horse saw them too. The footprints proved they had been there, and they disappeared into the woods like someone who absolutely did not want to be found. When I was around 10 years old, something happened to me that I still think about sometimes. At that age, I did not understand danger the same way adults do. I knew there were bad people in the world because everyone tells kids that. But it did not feel real to me most of the time. Bad things happened in movies, on the news, or to people far away. They did not happen on normal streets in normal neighborhoods, especially not half a block from my grandma's house. My grandma's house was one of those places that always felt safe to me. It had a warmth to it that I connected with family, food, comfort, and being looked after. When you are a kid, your grandma's house can feel almost like a little protected world. You know the rooms, you know the smells, you know where she sits, where the snacks are, where the TV is, and which chair you can hide behind when you are playing. It feels like nothing truly bad can reach you there. The neighborhood around her house seemed normal too. It was not some dark, abandoned area. It was just a regular street, with houses, front steps, yards, and people who sometimes sat outside. Adults lived there. Kids moved around, and everything had that ordinary neighborhood feeling. Because I had been there many times, I felt comfortable walking around nearby. I was only about half a block from her house, not far at all. Close enough that I could still think of myself as basically being near safety. That day, I was walking down the street by myself. I do not remember exactly where I was going or what I had been doing before that. Maybe I was just wandering around the way kids do. Maybe I had been sent to do something simple, or maybe I was walking back from somewhere nearby. The details before the moment are blurry because nothing seemed important until I saw him. I was walking along, not scared, not expecting anything. I was probably looking at the sidewalk, the houses, or whatever random things catch a kid's attention. Then I looked over and saw a man sitting on the front steps of a house. At first, That did not seem strange. People sit on their front steps all the time. Some people sit outside to smoke, drink coffee, watch the street, or just get some air. He was just a man outside a house, and if he had ignored me, I probably would have kept walking and forgotten him completely. But he did not ignore me. He looked up at me. Then he said he wanted to talk to me. The way he said it made me feel wrong right away. He was not asking a normal question, like where a street was, or if I knew someone nearby. He was not speaking in that friendly adult way people sometimes use with kids. He acted like he knew who I was, like we had some reason to speak, like I was supposed to stop and listen to him, but I had no idea who he was. I did not recognize him at all. He was a complete stranger to me. I knew my grandma. I knew some of the people around her house. I knew enough to understand that this man was not someone I should be talking to. Even at 10 years old, something inside me understood that the way he was acting was not normal. There is a certain fear that hits you as a child when an adult stranger focuses on you too directly. Adults are bigger, stronger. They control the world in ways kids do not. When a strange adult gives you attention that feels wrong, you suddenly become very aware of how small you are. That was how I felt in that moment. I was just a little kid on the sidewalk, and this grown man was sitting there, looking at me like I belonged in his business. I did not answer him the way he wanted. I did not walk closer. I did not stop. Instead, I started moving fast back toward my grandma's house. At first, I think I just walked quickly. I wanted distance. I wanted to get away without making it into a big scene. But almost immediately, I realized he was not staying on the steps. He got up. Then, he came after me. That changed everything. It was no longer just a creepy man saying he wanted to talk. It was a grown man chasing a 10-year-old child down the street. I do not know what he wanted from me, and honestly, I am glad I never found out. But in that moment, my body knew exactly what to do. I ran. I booked it back toward my grandma's house as fast as I could. I was little, and fear made my legs move faster than I thought they could. The street that had felt normal a few seconds earlier suddenly felt too long. Half a block is not far when you are walking calmly, but when someone is chasing you, it feels endless. Every step feels like it is not enough. Every second feels like he is getting closer. I could hear or sense him behind me, and that made me panic harder. I did not want to turn around because I was afraid that if I looked back, I would slow down. I just kept my eyes on where I needed to go. My grandma's house was safety. The front door was safety. Getting inside was the only thing that mattered. I do not remember if I screamed while running. I do not remember if anyone else was outside. I do not remember if any neighbors saw it. What I remember is the feeling of being chased, that horrible pressure behind me. The fear that a grown man might catch up to me before I reached the door. The instinct that told me if he grabbed me, something very bad would happen. I made it to my grandma's house. I got inside. The moment I was through the door, I did not stop in the entryway or try to explain right away. I ran into the living room and hid behind my grandma's chair. That is such a childlike thing to do, but I was a child, and I was terrified. The chair felt like cover. It felt like something solid between me and the man outside. I crouched behind it, trying to disappear. Luckily, my grandma was inside. And luckily, my grandma was not the kind of woman who scared easily. She was a small lady, but she had a strength to her that made her seem much bigger when she needed to be. Some people have that energy. They may not look intimidating at first, but when something threatens their family, something changes in them. My grandma was like that. She could be loving and sweet, but she was also tough. She had that old-school kind of courage that does not wait around for permission. I do not even think I had time to fully explain what had happened before the next terrifying thing happened. The man followed me all the way to the house. Then he burst through the front door. That is the part that still shocks me when I think about it. He did not stop at the sidewalk. He did not stop at the yard. He did not realize I had gone into a house and walk away like a normal person would. He came right after me and entered my grandma's home. A grown man chased a 10-year-old child into a house and forced his way through the front door like he had a right to be there. That is not confusion. That is not harmless. That is not someone who just wanted to talk. The moment he came through that door, everything became real in a way I could not even process. I was hiding behind the chair, probably shaking, and there he was inside the house. He had crossed the boundary. He had gone from creepy stranger outside to intruder inside my grandma's living space. But my grandma did not freeze. She got up, and she went straight at him. I can still picture the energy of that moment, even if the details are a little blurred by fear. My grandma stood up and started screaming in his face, telling him to get out of her house. She did not politely ask. She did not try to reason with him. She did not treat him like someone who deserved a calm conversation. She knew he had no business being there, and she made sure he knew it too. She was furious. There is something powerful about seeing someone you love protect you without hesitation. I was a kid, scared out of my mind, hiding behind furniture because a strange man had chased me. And my grandma, who was not a big person at all, put herself between me and him. She faced him down like he was nothing. She screamed at him with the kind of force that comes from love and rage mixed together. And somehow, it worked. The man's whole attitude changed. He did not argue. He did not attack. He did not keep trying to get to me. He suddenly looked sheepish, almost like he had been caught doing something embarrassing instead of something frightening. Then he turned around and walked away. That part has always disturbed me too. The way he just left when my grandma confronted him makes me wonder what he thought was going to happen if she had not been there. Did he expect the house to be empty? Did he think I had run into a place where I would be alone? Did he think he could get inside and do whatever he wanted? Was he surprised to find an adult there who would challenge him? I do not know. But I know that if my grandma had not been inside, the situation could have been much worse. That thought stayed with me. As a child, I did not have the full adult understanding of what might have happened. I knew it was scary. I knew he was wrong. I knew he had chased me and come into the house. But as I got older, the story became even more disturbing. A grown man does not chase a child and burst into a house for innocent reasons. There is no harmless explanation that makes sense. If he really knew me, he would have said who he was. If he really needed help, he would not have chased me. If he only wanted to talk, he would not have followed me into my grandma's home. The way he acted showed that he wanted something from me, and he was willing to scare me to get it. I never found out who he was. I do not know if he lived in that house where he had been sitting, if he was visiting someone, or if he was just sitting there waiting for a child to pass by. I do not know if he had seen me before. I do not know why he acted like he knew me. Maybe he was trying to trick me into stopping. Maybe he thought that if he acted familiar, I would trust him. That is something dangerous people sometimes do to kids. They pretend there is a connection. They make it seem like you are being rude if you do not respond. They try to pull you into a conversation before you can think clearly. But something in me knew not to stop. I am grateful for that. I am grateful that I ran. I am grateful that my grandma's house was close. And I am especially grateful that my grandma was home. Because if she had not been there, I do not know what I would have done. I was only 10. I was scared enough to hide behind a chair. Would I have been able to lock a door fast enough? Would I have known to call someone? Would I have run out the back? Would he have found me inside? I do not like thinking about it. My grandma saved me that day, not by fighting him physically, but by refusing to be afraid of him. She used her voice, her anger, and her presence. She made it clear that he had crossed into the wrong house, and even though he had been bold enough to chase a child and enter without permission, he was not bold enough to face her. That is why I call her a badass little lady. She earned that description. After he left, I do not remember every detail of what happened next. I do not remember if the police were called. I do not remember if anyone went after him or asked questions. What I remember most is the fear and the relief. The fear of seeing him in the doorway. The relief of watching him turn around and leave. The feeling of still being hidden, still small, still trying to understand why a stranger had chased me in the first place. I think experiences like that change how you see the world, even if you are young. Before that, I probably thought danger would look obvious. Maybe a scary-looking person, a dark alley, or something dramatic. But this man was just sitting on front steps in broad daylight, or at least in a normal neighborhood moment, acting like he belonged there. The danger did not announce itself until he spoke to me, then followed me. It taught me that if something feels wrong, you do not owe a stranger politeness. That is a hard lesson for kids because adults often teach children to be polite, to answer when spoken to not be rude. But there are moments when politeness can put you in danger. I am glad I did not stay because I was worried about being rude. I am glad I listened to the part of me that said, "You do not know him. Get away." I also learned that safe places matter. My grandma's house was close enough that I could reach it. I knew where to go. I knew someone was likely inside. That made all the difference. If I had been farther away, or if I had been somewhere unfamiliar, I do not know what would have happened. A half block can feel short until a grown man is chasing you. Then it feels like the longest distance in the world. Even now, I can think back and remember the rush of it. The sidewalk under my feet. The panic in my chest. The need to get through the door before he caught up. The living room, the chair. My grandma rising up like a wall between me and him. Her voice filling the room as she screamed at him to get out. That image of her is the part of the story I like to hold on to most. Not the man, not the chase, not the fear. My grandma. Small but fierce. Angry enough to make a grown man back down. Protective enough to stand up without hesitation. Still, the creepy part never fully goes away. Because there is no answer. There is no reason. There is no explanation that makes it better. A strange man saw a child walking alone, acted like he knew that child, asked to talk, chased the child when they ran, and then burst into the house after them. That is not normal behavior. That is the kind of thing you hear in warnings, and hope never happens in real life. But it happened to me, and for a few moments, I was just a 10-year-old kid running from a grown man who had decided he wanted to talk to me, whether I wanted to or not. I made it inside. My grandma was there, and because of her, he walked away. I was camping with some friends in Chilliwack, British Columbia, when one of the strangest and creepiest things I have ever experienced happened. Chilliwack is a beautiful area, especially if you like forests, mountains, rivers, and those quiet places that feel far away from normal life. During the day, it can feel peaceful in a way that is hard to describe. The trees are huge, the air smells clean, and the rivers move fast and cold over rocks. It is the kind of place where you can drive a little way out, and suddenly feel like the rest of the world has disappeared behind you. But the same things that make a place beautiful during the day can make it terrifying at night. We had gone up a logging road to find a place to camp. It was one of those rough roads that twist through the trees and climb away from regular traffic. The farther you drive, the more alone you feel. The road gets quieter, the forest gets thicker, and you start to realize that if something goes wrong out there, help is not close. You do not just walk to a store or knock on a neighbor's door. There are no streetlights, no houses, no cars passing every few minutes. Just trees, dirt, rocks, and darkness. We found a spot by the river and decided to make camp there. It was a good place, at least at first. The river was close enough that we could hear it moving all the time, rushing over stones and filling the silence with that steady sound. The clearing gave us enough space to set up, and the trees around us made the place feel private. There was no one else around for kilometers. That was part of the appeal. We wanted to get away from people, drink, sit around a fire, and enjoy the kind of night you only get when you are far from town. At first, everything felt normal. We got the camp set up, built a fire, and settled in. The light from the flames moved over everyone's faces, and the forest beyond the circle of firelight looked like a wall of black. The river kept rushing nearby, loud enough to cover small sounds, but not loud enough to make us forget we were completely alone. We talked, laughed, and drank like people do when they are camping with friends and not worrying about anything. There is something about sitting around a fire in the middle of nowhere that makes you feel safe and exposed at the same time. The fire gives warmth and light, and it makes a small circle that feels like your space. But outside that circle, everything is dark. You can only see a few feet past the flames. Beyond that, anything could be standing there, and you would not know until it stepped close enough for the light to touch it. That night, we were not thinking like that at first. We were having fun. Nobody was acting scared. We were probably telling jokes, talking too loud, and enjoying the fact that we had no one around to complain about noise. The fire was going, drinks were out, and the whole night had that relaxed camping feeling. Then, sometime in the middle of the night, we started hearing something moving through the forest. At first, it was easy to ignore. When you camp in the woods, you expect sounds. Branches move. Animals walk around. Wind shifts through leaves. The river makes it hard to tell exactly where certain sounds are coming from. A small animal can sound bigger than it is when you cannot see it. A deer stepping through brush can sound like a person. A falling branch can make everyone stop talking for a second. But this sound was different. It sounded like something walking toward us. Not running. Not crashing wildly through the bushes. Walking, slow, steady movement through the dark. It was coming closer, step by step. At some point, our conversation started to die down because everyone heard it. You could feel the change around the fire. One person stopped talking, then another. Then we were all listening. The forest outside the firelight suddenly felt much closer. We stared toward the trees, trying to see what was coming. The sound continued. Something was pushing through the bush, moving toward the clearing where we had set up camp. I remember thinking it was probably an animal, because what else would be out there? We were far up a logging road, camped by a river with no one else around for kilometers. A random person walking through the woods in the middle of the night made no sense. But the steps kept coming. Then, someone walked out of the bush. It was a girl. She came slowly into the clearing, emerging from the darkness like she had been part of it. She was not running, not calling for help, not acting panicked. She just slowly walked out of the trees and came toward us. The firelight caught her as she moved closer, and all of us stared at her, trying to understand what we were seeing. A random girl in the middle of the forest, in the middle of the night, walking out of the bush toward our campsite. It was so strange that for a second nobody knew what to say. We had all expected an animal, maybe a deer or something else moving through the trees. But seeing a person was worse, because a person should have had a reason to be there. If she had been lost, she should have looked scared or relieved to see us. If she was hurt, she should have been calling out. If she belonged to another camp, we should have seen lights or heard voices somewhere nearby. But there had been nothing. No other campfires, no vehicles, no voices, no signs of anyone else around. She came closer to the fire. Then she asked, "Have you seen my friend?" The way she said it was what made it so eerie. It was not just the words. It was how she said friends. It came out stretched and strange, like the word did not fit right in her mouth. It sounded off enough that everyone noticed. There was something about her voice that made the hair on my neck stand up. It was not a normal question asked by a normal lost person. It felt like something from a dream or from one of those stories people tell around campfires to scare each other. But this was not a story. She was standing right there in front of us. All of us were weirded out. Nobody wanted to be rude, because if she really was lost, that would be awful. But nobody wanted to invite her closer either. The situation was too strange. We were in the middle of nowhere. She had appeared from the bush in the middle of the night. She did not seem afraid enough for someone who had lost her group in the woods. She did not seem desperate. She did not ask for help in the way you would expect. She just asked if we had seen her friends, with that strange way of saying it. For a few seconds, nobody answered. We just looked at each other and then back at her. It was one of those moments where everyone is waiting for someone else to speak, because no one wants to be the first person to deal with the situation. Finally, one of us managed to say something like, no. That was all. No, we had not seen her friends. The girl smiled. That smile did not help. She just said, "Oh, okay." Then she turned and walked back into the bush. But not the way she came. That detail bothered all of us immediately. If she had come from one direction and was looking for friends, why leave in another direction? If she was lost, why not ask where she was? Why not ask if we had a phone, or if she could sit by the fire, or if we could help her find the road? Why not ask how to get back to wherever she came from? Instead, she accepted our answer with that strange smile and walked off into the dark in a different direction. She disappeared back into the trees. After she was gone, none of us spoke normally for a moment. The forest felt different now. The darkness around the fire was no longer just empty darkness. It was where she had come from. It was where she had gone. It was where she might still be. The sound of the river kept going like nothing had happened, but now every rustle in the bushes felt important. Every shadow beyond the firelight looked like it could be her standing there. Watching, we all started talking at once after that, trying to make sense of it. Who was she? Where did she come from? Was she drunk? Was she high? Was there another campsite somewhere we had missed? Was she actually lost? Was she trying to lure us somewhere? Were there people with her hidden in the trees? Was this some kind of prank? But none of the answers felt good. If she was lost, why did she seem so calm? If she was looking for friends, why did she not seem worried? If she came from another campsite, where was it? If there were other people nearby, why had we not heard them? If she needed help, why did she leave? The whole thing had a wrong feeling. It is hard to explain, but everyone there felt it. Sometimes a situation does not have to be openly dangerous to feel deeply unsafe. It can be something small in the timing, the voice, the way someone moves, or the way their behavior does not match what they are saying. That girl's behavior did not match her situation at all. She had walked out of the bush in the middle of the night, in a remote area, asking about friends in a voice that made our skin crawl. Then she smiled and walked away into a different part of the forest like it was nothing. There was no way any of us were going to sleep after that. The plan had been to drink, enjoy the fire, and eventually go to bed. But after she appeared, going into a tent felt impossible. A tent is not protection. It is fabric and zippers. Once you are inside, you cannot see what is around you. You cannot tell if someone is standing outside or walking near your camp or staring at you from the tree line. The thought of lying down in a sleeping bag while that girl, or whoever she was with, might still be somewhere in the bushes was too much. So we decided to keep drinking until the sun came up. That felt like the safest option, or at least the least terrifying one. Stay awake. Keep the fire going. Keep people together. Keep eyes on the trees. None of us wanted to be the person who turned in while everyone else stayed by the fire. Nobody wanted to wake up in the dark to hear footsteps outside the tent. We joked about it because that is what people do when they are scared. Someone called her the wandering devil lady, and honestly, at that moment, it did not feel too dramatic. It was easier to make jokes than to admit how unsettled we all were. But underneath the laughter, everyone was on edge. The fire became more important after that. We kept feeding it, making sure it stayed bright. The flames pushed the darkness back a little, but not enough. The forest was still around us. Every time the fire cracked, someone would glance toward the trees. Every time the wind moved through the branches, we would stop talking for a second. If there was a snap somewhere out in the bush, everyone heard it. I kept thinking about the way she had walked into the clearing. Slowly, not like she was scared, not like she was relieved, just slowly, as if she knew exactly where she was going. I also kept thinking about how far we were from anyone else. No one else was supposed to be there. We had gone up a logging road and made camp by the river because the place was isolated. We wanted that isolation, but after she appeared, it felt like a bad choice. Isolation is fun until something strange happens. Then suddenly it means there is no help nearby, no witnesses, no easy way to know who else is out there. The more we thought about it, the more possibilities came up. Maybe she really was with a group somewhere, and they were all drunk or high and wandering around separately. Maybe she had gotten turned around. Maybe she was embarrassed and did not want our help. Maybe she thought she knew where her friends were and just kept walking. But then why did she not have a flashlight? Why was she alone? Why was she so calm? Why did she walk through the bush instead of using the logging road? Why did she ask only once and then leave? Maybe there were people hiding nearby, and she was sent to see how many of us there were. That thought made everyone even more uncomfortable. If someone wanted to rob or mess with campers, sending a girl first would be a good way to lower people's guard. People might be more likely to help her, follow her, or let her close to camp. We had no proof of that, but the idea was enough to keep us alert. Maybe she was mentally unwell or on something. That was another possibility, and honestly, it would explain a lot. People on drugs can act strangely. They can wander into dangerous areas, speak in odd ways, and seem calm when they should be scared. But that did not make the situation safe. A person who is high and wandering through the woods at night can still be unpredictable. And if she had friends nearby who were also messed up, that could be even worse. We never found out. That is the part that makes the story stick. If someone had come by the next morning saying, Sorry, my friend was drunk and wandered off, then it would have become a strange but explainable camping story. If we had found another campsite nearby, or seen a vehicle, or heard people calling for her, the whole thing would have made sense. But there was nothing. No explanation came. No one else appeared. She walked out of the bush, asked her question, smiled, and vanished into the forest. The night felt very long after that. We stayed around the fire until morning. None of us wanted to sleep, but staying awake did not make the fear disappear. It just made us more tired and more jumpy. The hours between the middle of the night and sunrise can feel endless when you are waiting for something to happen. The darkness seems to last too long. You keep looking at the sky, hoping it will start to lighten. You keep telling yourself that everything will feel better once the sun comes up. And it did. A little. When daylight finally came, the forest looked normal again. That is the strange thing about the woods. In the morning, everything becomes ordinary. The trees are just trees. The bushes are just bushes. The river is just a river. The clearing where we had been sitting all night looked like a normal campsite. If someone had walked by in the daylight, they would never understand how wrong the place had felt a few hours earlier. But we remembered. We remembered the footsteps coming toward us. We remembered her voice. We remembered the way she said friends. We remembered the smile. We remembered that she did not go back the way she came. Even in daylight, none of that felt normal. I still do not know who she was or what she was doing out there. Maybe the truth is simple. Maybe she was just a drunk or high girl who wandered away from a group we never saw. Maybe her friends were somewhere farther down the river or back on another part of the logging road. Maybe she found them later and laughed about scaring a group of campers. That is possible. But when I think about that night, the simple explanation never fully satisfies me, because she did not feel like someone who needed help. She felt like someone who had come to us for a reason, asked a question that did not really sound like a question, and then left once she got whatever answer she wanted. Maybe that is just my imagination making it worse. Maybe the darkness, the isolation, and the firelight made everything seem creepier than it was. But everyone there felt the same thing. It was not just me. All of us were weirded out. All of us decided sleeping was a terrible idea. That says something. People who have never camped far from others may not understand how powerful the dark can be. When you are in a city, darkness still has light in it. There are windows, cars, signs, streetlights, people nearby. But out there, the darkness is complete. It surrounds you. It presses against the edge of the firelight. When someone appears from it, especially someone who should not be there, it feels almost unreal. That girl came from that darkness like she belonged to it. Then she walked back into it. And we spent the rest of the night staring at the trees, drinking, keeping the fire alive, and waiting for the sun, because none of us wanted to close our eyes while the wandering devil lady might still be somewhere in the bushes. My mother had always been abusive. That is the simplest way I can say it, even though there is nothing simple about growing up with someone like that. I am not a therapist, so I cannot say exactly what was wrong with her. Maybe it was borderline personality disorder. Maybe it was narcissistic personality disorder. Maybe it was something else completely. I only know what it felt like to live with her. It felt like living with someone who needed control the way other people need air. She did not just want to be in charge of the house. She wanted to be in charge of me. She wanted to decide where I went, what I did, who I talked to, and what kind of future I was allowed to have. She refused to teach me how to drive, because deep down, she did not want me to be able to leave her. Driving meant freedom. Driving meant I could get away, if I needed to. Driving meant I could have a life that did not depend on her. So she kept that from me for as long as she could. Her abuse was not only emotional either, it was physical too, and sometimes it was cruel in ways that still do not feel real when I say them out loud. I was burned with cigarettes, more than once. At one point, she used a George Foreman grill to burn the back of my hand because dinner was not ready when she got home from work. That is the kind of thing that changes you. It is not just the pain in the moment. It is the message behind it. It teaches you that your body is not safe. It teaches you that mistakes are dangerous. It teaches you that the person who is supposed to protect you might hurt you for something as small as dinner not being done. And yet, even with everything she did, I still loved her. That is something people who have not lived through abuse do not always understand. They think love disappears the moment someone hurts you. They think the answer is simple. Just leave. Just hate them. Just cut them off. But when the person hurting you is your mother, your mind does not work that cleanly. She was the person who raised me. She was the person I wanted to love me. Even when I hated what she did, even when I feared her, there was still a part of me that wanted her to get better. I wanted her to choose us. I wanted her to become the mother I kept hoping she could be. Despite how controlling she was, I did eventually make it to college. That felt impossible for a long time. Leaving her house and going away to school gave me something I had never truly had before: distance. For the first time, I could breathe without constantly waiting for her mood to change. I could think without her voice always filling the room. I could look at my life and understand how bad things had really been. While I was away, I began helping my father and stepmother build a case to get custody of my younger brother and sister. At that time, I was 19 years old. My brother was 13, and my sister was 11. They were still young enough to be trapped in the middle of it, and I could not just walk away and leave them there. I knew what my mother was like. I knew what that house was like. I knew what it did to a child to live under that kind of control and fear. My father eventually got emergency custody of them. That was a huge step, but it did not mean everything was finished. There were still legal issues, still court dates, still questions about what would happen next. My mother wanted custody back. In my heart, I wanted my brother and sister to be safe, but I also wanted my mother to somehow prove she could change. I wanted to believe there was still a chance for her to get help and become different. During Christmas break of my freshman year of college, I went back to her house. I had 1 month off from school, and I decided to spend part of that time helping her clean. Her house had reached hoarder status. It was not just messy. It was beyond what one person could reasonably fix alone. There was trash, filth, cat urine, cat feces, roaches, and piles of things that should have been thrown away long before. The air in that house felt heavy and dirty. It was the kind of place that made you feel unclean just standing inside it. She really needed professional cleaners. She needed therapy too. But I still went there and tried to help her myself. Looking back, I think that was my way of giving her one last chance. If she could get the house cleaned up, and if she agreed to go to therapy, then maybe she could have a path toward getting custody of my brother and sister again. I did not want her to fail. Even after everything, I wanted her to get better. I wanted there to be a version of the future where she was healthy enough to be in our lives. I spent 2 weeks of my Christmas break at her house cleaning. I worked in that awful mess, trying to make progress in a place that felt almost impossible to fix. I was 19, still young, and still carrying the mindset of someone who had grown up under abuse. I thought if I helped enough, worked enough, gave enough, maybe something could change. Maybe she would see that I was trying. Maybe she would choose therapy. Maybe she would love us more than she loved control. On Christmas Day, everything broke. That day, my mother was speaking with her lawyer. She was obsessive and controlling, and she would call him constantly. It was not just normal communication about a legal case. She needed to control every piece of it. She needed to know what was happening, what was being said, who was against her, and how she could fight it. What she learned that day changed her mood completely. Her lawyer told her that I was going to testify on my father's behalf. That was true. I was going to tell the truth. I was going to speak for my brother and sister. I was going to help my father keep them safe. But to my mother, that was betrayal. It did not matter that I had spent the last 2 weeks in her house trying to help her clean. It did not matter that I still loved her. It did not matter that I had wanted her to get better. In her mind, all that mattered was that I was helping my father take her children away. That same day, I was supposed to leave. My Christmas break was 1 month long, and I had already spent 2 weeks at my mother's house. I was going to take a Greyhound bus from Phoenix up to my father's home in St. George, Utah. My bags were packed and sitting by the front door. I was literally in the living room, on the phone with my father, waiting for my mother to finish speaking with her lawyer so she could take me to the bus station. I was ready to leave that house. I had no idea how close I was to not leaving at all. People say that when something truly traumatic happens, time slows down. I used to think that was just something people said in movies. But it is true. There are moments when your brain cannot take in everything at normal speed, so the world seems to stretch. Every detail becomes sharp. Every second feels longer than it should. My mother walked into the living room from the kitchen, and I saw the gun in her hand. It belonged to her father. It had not been fired or properly taken care of in years, at least as far as I knew. But none of that mattered in the moment. It was still a gun. It was still in her hand. And she was looking at me with that same dead expression she always had when she abused me. Her eyes were like a shark's eyes. Empty, cold, no feeling, no softness, no hesitation. I knew that look. I had seen it before, usually right before she hurt me. It was the look that told me she was no longer seeing me as her child. She was seeing me as something that had disobeyed her, something that had to be punished. She asked me where I got the nerve to be in her home while I was helping my dad take her kids away. I do not remember every word perfectly, but I remember the meaning. I remember the anger. I remember the way it landed in my chest. In her mind, I had no right to be there. I had no right to help my siblings. I had no right to speak the truth. After everything I had done to try to help her, that was what she saw. Then she fired the gun. I do not remember the actual sound of the shot. That part is missing. Trauma does that sometimes. It takes pieces away and leaves others in painful detail. I do remember being showered with drywall. I remember something hot passing by the right side of my head. It was close enough that I felt the heat of it. The bullet missed me, but not by much. It hit the wall close enough that pieces of drywall came down on me. For a moment, my brain could not understand what had happened. My mother had shot at me. My mother had tried to kill me. She kept pulling the trigger, but the gun jammed. That is the reason I am alive. Not because she stopped herself. Not because she changed her mind. Not because she realized I was her daughter. The gun jammed. That old, neglected gun failed to fire again. If it had worked properly, I do not think I would be here. The next clear memory I have is running. I was still on the phone with my father. I do not remember grabbing my bags. I do not remember making the decision to run. I do not remember opening the door. I do not remember the first part of the escape at all. One moment, I was in the living room with drywall falling around me, and the next moment, I was 3 blocks away from her house, running down the road while my father screamed through the phone, asking if I was okay. I must have grabbed my bag somehow, but I do not remember doing it. I must have gotten out of the house, but that memory is gone too. My body knew what to do, even when my mind could not process it. I ran because some part of me understood that if I stayed, she might try again. If the gun unjammed, if she found another way, if she caught up to me, I might not survive. My father was still on the phone, terrified, trying to get me to answer him. I was in shock. I was still thinking like an abuse victim. That is important to understand because some people ask why I did not call the police right away. The truth is, I did not call them because I was not thinking like a person who had just escaped an attempted murder. I was thinking like someone who had spent her life being trained to protect the abuser, to minimize what happened, to survive quietly, and to not cause trouble. That is what abuse does. It rewires you. Even after your mother shoots at you, some part of your mind still hesitates to make it real by calling the cops. Some part of you is still afraid of what will happen if you get her in trouble. Some part of you is still trying to manage her emotions, even from 3 blocks away. Instead, I called a cab. This was before Uber, so that was my only way to get to the Greyhound station. I got there 2 hours early for my bus. I was terrified the entire time. My father and stepmother kept calling me over and over to make sure I was still alive. They were far away in Utah, helpless, knowing what had happened, but unable to get to me immediately. I sat in that Greyhound station like a trapped animal. I watched every entrance and every exit. I could not relax. I could not sit like a normal person waiting for a bus. I kept scanning faces, looking at doors, checking corners. I was convinced my mother might show up. I was afraid she would walk in with the gun or something else and finish what she had started. I was too scared to go to the restroom because I thought she might somehow corner me in there, even though that may sound irrational from the outside. In that moment, it felt completely possible. Fear does not care about logic when you have just escaped someone who wanted to hurt you. I sat there with my bags, waiting, trying to make myself invisible and alert at the same time. I did not know who to trust. I did not know if anyone around me could tell something had happened. I did not know what I looked like. I just knew I had to get on that bus and get away from Phoenix. I had to make it to my father and stepmother. I had to survive the waiting. No one at the station said anything to me. Later, after I reached my father's house, I found out there was a cut down my cheek. I do not know exactly what caused it. Maybe it was from plaster. Maybe it was from a piece of drywall or something that flew when the bullet hit the wall. I had been bleeding, and no one at the Greyhound station told me. I wish I could say that surprised me, but it did not. People ignore a lot. People look away from things they do not want to deal with. I made it to my father's house in St. George. I was alive. I was away from her, and eventually, we did get my brother and sister into my father's full custody. That was the most important thing. They were safe from her in a way I had not been safe for so much of my life. I eventually got a restraining order as well. But going fully no contact with my mother was not simple. That is a long story on its own. People often think that after something this extreme, you can just cut the person off and never look back. But trauma bonds are complicated. Abuse is complicated. Love is complicated. Fear is complicated. My mother had tried to kill me, and still, the part of me that had always wanted her to get better did not disappear overnight. Now, years later, I am married. I have a 1-month-old daughter of my own. Holding her has changed something in me. It has made some things clearer and some things harder. I look at my daughter and cannot understand how my mother could have done the things she did. I cannot imagine hurting my child that way. I cannot imagine looking at her with dead eyes. I cannot imagine wanting to control her so completely that I would destroy her rather than let her become free. Becoming a parent has brought me joy, but it has also brought old fear back in strange ways. Once every few months, I experience moments of depersonalization. It is hard to explain to someone who has never felt it. It is like reality suddenly becomes thin, like my life is happening, but I am not fully inside it. I can be with my husband, or holding my daughter, or sitting in my own safe home, and suddenly some part of me becomes convinced that none of it is real. In those moments, I feel sure that this life is just a dying fantasy. I feel sure that I am not really married, that I do not really have this baby, that I did not really escape, that I am actually still back there, dying on the floor of that hoarder house, surrounded by trash, cat urine, cat feces, roaches, and all the filth I could not clean up for that woman. I feel like my brain made up this entire future in the last moments before death, because the truth was too terrible to face. When those thoughts come, they shake me for days. I can tell myself what is real. I can look around my home. I can touch the things around me. I can listen to my husband's voice. I can hold my daughter and feel her breathing. I can remind myself that I survived, that I got out, that the gun jammed, that I made it to the bus station, that I reached my father's house, that years have passed. But trauma does not always listen to facts right away. Sometimes my body still thinks I am back there. Sometimes my mind still expects the shot. Sometimes I still feel like I am running, but then I look at my husband and I remember that I am here. I look at my daughter and I remember that I am not in that house anymore. I remember that I survived something I should not have survived. I remember that my siblings got out too. I remember that the life I have now is real, even when my trauma tries to convince me it is not. I do still love my mother in some broken, painful way. I do not say that because she deserves it. I say it because it is the truth of what abuse can do to a person. Love does not always die cleanly, even when it should. But loving her does not mean I have to let her hurt me. It does not mean I have to excuse what she did. It does not mean I have to pretend she was safe. She was not safe. She was my mother, and she shot at me. That is a sentence I still struggle to fully accept. But I survived. I got out of that house. I built a life beyond her control. I became a wife and a mother. I have a family of my own now, and even when the past reaches for me, even when I feel like I am slipping out of reality, I try to hold on to what I know. I am not dying on that floor. I am not trapped in that house. I am here, and every time I remember that, I feel relief.